in this episode.
I've gone through and I've talked to Navy SEALs, I've talked to CIA operatives, DSS operatives, British commandos about their application of the arms of James Bond in the real world.
Yeah.
And so we're in the same way at the top where I described kind of my passion and what I do with my channel here, right, which is the blending of pop culture and reality through the lens of James Bond. I wanted this book to also do that.
In an obtuse world, Mark and Jefe will combine military, law enforcement, and general FUD knowledge to keep you vertical. Welcome to the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Thanks for swinging by. We sure do appreciate you checking out another edition of the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast. We are recording on location this time. We've got a very special guest. I'm super excited about this episode, and we're going to go 2 for 2 this time because our last guest also has something in common with this episode's guest as well. But before we get into that, we also have to say, of course, naturally, hello, co-host.
Hey, back from the jungles of Arnland. Yeah, it was a great experience. It's the budget version of Tusk. So talk to your local recruiter if you want to go, but I would not recommend it.
So you had like 16,000 heat casualties in the first day. Is that right?
Actually, it was 108. You don't have to rotate that. We can just hit kind of close. Yeah, it was about 180 the first day, and then after that, a total, I think for the exercise, was about 500.
Oh, that's wonderful. As the dad joke goes, it's not the dry heat that gets you, right? It's the humidity. Is that how that goes?
It's the humility. Is this? We're doing good on this? The mic? Sorry, I'm just looking at this.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
okay.
I think we're good here. All right. So first and foremost, naturally, we want to say a huge thank you to you guys. You guys are listening to this, and we really do appreciate it. Each and every single episode, we see our numbers go up, and we really do appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to us talking to a can. Take that how you want. So if you guys have any comments, questions, if you want to interact with this episode, we'll have a comment from the last couple of episodes here at the end of the episode to say a huge thank you to those people interacting. If you want to do that, you can also jump in and just comment wherever you guys are listening to this. We are on every single podcast platform that's out there. We're also on Firearms Radio Network, which we really do appreciate them. We're on YouTube. You can find us on the YouTubes as well. And then, I think that covers everything.
Tarot Arms.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Well, naturally, that was going to be the next thing. Is a huge thank you to our title sponsor. That's a Tarot Arms. Naturally, I just did a video a couple of weeks ago, by the time you guys are listening to this, about why I have chosen the AK as my number one go-to rifle, especially for competitions. And a big component of that is the Tarot Arms and their mounting solutions for red dot optics, and here pretty soon for micro prisms with a what?
With a J-frame on it. Actually, I pulled it up right here. February 15th, 2023, I was promised a T1 mount for a J-frame with 1 7/8 inch barrel, and we have received confirmation that it is in the works. The only unfortunate thing is it's meant to mount on the side of an AK, so I don't know exactly how we're going to fit that in just yet, but we are in a good step to the right direction.
Would that be considered an AK New York reload?
I think it's more just an abomination that we're all here for.
Just like this podcast. But at the end of the day, we appreciate all of their support. They're not only making this podcast happen, but they're also really going to help push us forward into 2025, and we really do appreciate that. So with all of that being said, we have a wonderful guest. This is something that Jefe has pulled together, and I really do appreciate his efforts on this, because we've been following this guy for a long time.
I know I have, but it's been a hard time, especially because he's such a busy man. But we're here with Caleb Daniels, aka Commando Bond, here in Kansas City. How's it going?
Doing well, man. Thanks for doing this.
So who are you? What do you do?
Well, before we get into that, I have a question. Are you a fop or a Dapper Dan man? You get the reference? Anybody get the reference?
No.
It's "Oh brother, where art thou?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I'm not
I'll be a Dapper Dan.
Dapper Dan. Okay.
Okay. Original question. Who are you? What do you do?
So yeah, like you said, my name is Caleb Daniels. most people don't know the name because I've got the handle. So Commando Bond, if you follow that, which great if you do. Thank you. Instagram and website associated with that. Really, the idea of that and what it was is I spent the last this year marks 10 years in the firearm space.
Okay.
Started at 17, 27 now. And so professionally been in there this whole time. And what I wanted to do was normalize the world of firearms through the lens of pop culture. I know a lot of folks have done that in the past. I feel like in the primary lens that most people go through is like video games. That's a really easy way to capture a lot of markets. But for me, I'm wanting to kind of capture folks through another lens. And that was my other primary passion, which was the world of James Bond. So the novels, the films. So blending.
You don't say.
Yeah, right. I mean, Bond's in the name, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea of the account was to blend the world of James Bond into the world of firearms, which they coexist already. Like, Bond does not exist in a vacuum, nor do his firearms. The two intermingle, which is why the account for me isn't just about, here's a gun on white. It's the firearm with the clothing, with the drinks, with it's a sartorial, it's a lifestyle, it's a whole thing. And so testing, engaging with, and capturing that to then start having conversations about the world of firearms with folks that might not be comfortable is really what this has always been about.
So I guess the first question we have to start, besides who and what you do, why Bond? Like what drove you to Bond?
I've said this a lot, and I think it's probably my favorite quote from anyone associated with Bond. Sean Connery once said, he never had to work so hard to make everything look so easy when he was talking about playing James Bond. And to me, I think that's why Bond is so approachable for so many people, because it's not just it's a standard man, like a Batman scenario, right? Which was childhood hero, and it blends in really well. And I think the two connect super well, right? James Bond is somebody who's just a person who, with a 7-round magazine of 32 automatic, or in the novels, 8 rounds of 25, saves the world repeatedly and has all these things happening around him, and is, more importantly, part of a romanticized, fictionalized part of our world where it has this romantic air and quality to it. It's fascinating because it's, like I said, it's not just guns. It's not like a Jack Reacher where he's buying a T-shirt out of a thrift store and swapping it out.
Yeah.
There's opinions about clothing, cars, every aspect of the world gets to be celebrated. And I think that's why Bond is so fascinating.
Would you say that you are bringing a modern element to that Bondness, or is it just still kind of that vintage swank, I guess?
Well, for me, Sean Connery was my first impact and my first touch point. So I live for the vintage Bond. I mean, my daily carry is a 1967 Walther PPK, right? Like I really, and I think what's important about that is my nuance there as well. My two most carried firearms are that and my Alchemy 1911. I transition between those two most frequently. I also have like the P99, and I carry full frame pistols when I want to, or striker fired, or whatever the case may be. But I think that's the fascinating part about Bond, is because the character has spanned 70 years literary and 61 years now cinematically. It's a content-rich environment, and each book and each movie operates as a time capsule for the world that operated at the time. So it's really fun. Like, one day I might be shooting and capturing and celebrating, like, a Glock and a K-Pos carbine, or whatever the case may be, like a conversion kit. And the next, it's a HKP7, and both of which are heavily used by James Bond. And so I personally prefer that vintage, rustic aesthetic. Daniel Craig era, I mean, obviously is super impactful. I mean, I'm literally wearing a polo from Casino Royale right now, the Sunspell Riviera. And so there's no one's there, but I'm also wearing the watch band from Goldfinger. From Zulu Alpha makes a lovely one, and I'm wearing that. So for me, it's I don't exist in a binary. I enjoy celebrating every aspect. So there's not a favorite actor. There's not a favorite film. I mean, I have things that I really enjoy, but whatever the mood might be, there's a Bond for that. And I think that's what makes the character so fun is, I might be having an awful day and I'm like, I need something really campy. I'll give you a great example. I was staying with Ian McCollum because we were working on some promotional material for the book that I'm doing. And I was at his house, and we got the news breaking about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
Yep.
And we're sitting there and we're like, we were going to watch a Bond movie tonight. We're like, well, maybe something dark doesn't really fit the bill anymore.
Yeah.
But should we still watch a Bond movie? I'm like, absolutely. Let's watch Moonraker. And so we watched one of the campiest Bond movies, and we have a great time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power of it. Like, we could have gone we were going to watch something a little more aggressive originally, and we walked that back because, well, the emotion of the room was different.
Yep. So, that's a Roger Moore.
Roger Moore, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's where I grew up with.
Sure.
No, and naturally, I saw some of the earlier, Sean Connery.
Yeah.
But then Roger Moore is really what I remember as a kid. So Moonraker, Octopussy.
Yeah. Spy Who Loved Me, The Man with the Golden Gun.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of my favorite movies ever is For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah.
That was the follow-up to Moonraker. They kind of went darker again.
Yeah.
They kind of like, if you watch the Moore movies, you see them like take a leap of faith and kind of go crazy with something, and then they walk it back with something a little more grounded and down to earth.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. I have so I am actually probably one of the worst people to talk about Bond because I had a good friend of mine who was really big into it. We tried to sit down and watch all of them. I don't think I made it through a single one of like the Sean Connerys, the Roger Moores, the George Lazenby's without like napping once or twice.
Yeah.
And then we got to Pierce Brosnan. I'm all for it. Daniel Craig. I'm all for it. So I guess it's just kind of
it's what you're used to, right?
Yeah.
Like
I grew up watching, playing GoldenEye.
Sure.
You and the boys get your 4 Nintendo 64
exactly.
controllers. You give that one guy you don't like the Mad Catz one because it kind of sucks, but it's whatever. And then you get some pizzas and you just hang out and play GoldenEye all evening. And then
no, that's a generational touch point for a lot of folks. There's actually a really great bar here in Kansas City, Rewind Video and Dive.
Yep, I got removed there once for yelling too loud playing GoldenEye.
It's in the basement of one of my favorite movie theaters. Actually, my bachelor party there.
No.
Yeah, it was Screenland Armor.
Yeah.
So Screenland Armor, they do private theater rentals and stuff. And so my friends were like, what do we want to do for your bachelor party, this and that, a few years back? And I said, well, I would love to just force you all to watch a Sean Connery, James Bond movie with me. So we rented a private theater, and we watched Thunderball together.
Okay.
And it was so fun. But yeah, Screenland's great. The bar is amazing. I mean, it's themed like a 90s basement. So it's got the wood paneling, all the movie posters.
You
your
sat on
mom's
that couch. You sat on that couch before in someone's basement before. It's like that dirty beer stained.
Oh, yeah.
It's wonderful.
There's like a Toy Story poster in one corner and like Die Hard 1 in the other. And tube TVs as far as the eye can see. Hell, they have like their own like version of a Blockbuster with VHS tapes in the basement. You can check them out. But yeah, you go up to the bar and you check out video game controllers and your preferred video game, and you sit up in front of a giant tube TV and you play games with your friends.
We
it's a lot of fun.
Every year. We're trying to make it every year, but they have the Horror Fest in about March timeframe. My buddy loves like vintage horror movies, so we go there and spend 2-3 days at the casino, gamble, and then go watch a bunch of B-tier horror movies. But it's a ton of fun because that theater is so awesome. They do such a great job of keeping that like vintage feel to a movie theater.
It's super eclectic. It's super fun. I saw my first, and they do a great job of like, aside from like their Horror Fest, like screening vintage movies to celebrate like big milestones. So, like From Russia with Love turned 60 years a few years back. And I went with one of my best friends. It was the first Sean Connery movie I got to see on the screen, on the big screen, and it was so much fun. And the same goes. My other friend's really big into like monster movies and stuff. So we saw Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and that was about the crowd you would expect.
Yes,
and it was absolutely like the people watching phenomenal. The movie even better.
That's how that Horror Fest was. We were respectable dads. We had polos and like nice clothes on. And we did not fit the bill, but it's just fun to, can kind of, it's, as you talk about, the generational touch point. Everyone grew up with these movies. I think last year was like the 30th anniversary of the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. Well, hell, they did a Nick Cage fest the other day.
Oh my God.
Where
really?
it was a 48-hour weekend where you could just watch every and it was a 6-movie marathon that they said that they billed it as. I think it was one day, not 48. And it was a grab bag. They like randomly generated and selected and curated 6 or 7 Nicolas Cage movies.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I could not get a single buddy to do it with me. Like,
next
I'll
time,
do it.
I'll say we will be there.
I can tell you, if Nan is listening, she would be all into it. That's my girlfriend. She is a huge like closet Nick Cage fan. and just absolutely loves. What's the new movie with Pedro Pascal?
Oh, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Exactly.
It's hilarious.
Oh yeah, it's
Deadpool, kind of like fourth wall breaking hilarity.
Yes,
Like it's very cleverly done.
Yeah, very.
I
cleverly
really
done.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was very very smartly done. So let me transition just a little real quick. Kind of hinted at it at the beginning of the episode, but our guest last episode was Doc from Dark Angel Medical.
Mhm.
You and he share a common thread in the fact that you have worked together with Jack Carr
Yeah.
on his newest book. I forgot to mention that.
Red Sky Morning.
Yeah, Red Sky
sorry,
Morning.
You're going to say what the book was.
Oh no, go ahead. What?
It's Red Sky Morning. That's
Yeah,
Okay,
the
yeah, this-
007.
Yes. So,
Oh,
so Doc contributed to the medical trauma scene that is inside that book. No spoilers. I have not personally read it as of yet, but I know
Missing
that
out.
Jefe has. So,
yeah, I gave you a signed copy.
yes, I understand. Some of us didn't have a month off. Okay, to go play and
In Arnland.
yeah.
See, I just
Right.
made a pot of coffee the night it showed up because I got an advance copy, and I told my wife, I'm like, I'm just not sleeping tonight, and had it in one sitting. Just
Oh, wow.
Speaking of advanced copies, I want to talk about another advanced copy if we're allowed to.
yeah.
Okay.
I can at least describe and talk about it.
Okay,
For sure.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Totally.
We got one Jack Carr thing at a time.
But so Doc from Dark Angel Medical worked on the book with Jack Carr. You've
Sure.
had some influence with Jack Carr as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? What the experience was like?
Yeah, I mean, influence is a dangerous word. First and foremost, Jack and I are friends. I told this story to one of the people he works with the other day, actually, because they said something effective. Well, obviously you're like a fan first. I'm like, well, actually, like it's a weird story because my wife and I, we try to travel at least once a year together around our anniversary. We got married on the 7th of August, so it's like a really nice. I'm just gonna give that.
By the way, guys, we're in
Okay, cool.
we're in a bar right now.
Cocktail
in a
bar.
cocktail lounge. Sorry.
Yeah. You might hear some background noise. Maybe it might be a little light. I'm not sure.
but
It
that's
doesn't
just the
seem like it's
magical
picking
liquor
up.
being made.
But we got some guy with some maracas. What are we doing? We gin and tonic? What is he doing over there?
That's what we call shaken, not stirred.
Okay, there it is.
There-
There it is.
there you
A
go.
very Bond reference.
It is
Speaking of
authentic
Bond,
as can be.
They actually have a Vesper Martini here
Yeah.
on the menu. It's $25. It does have Lillet Blanc in it though, so
Yeah.
at least it's somewhat legit.
Yeah, it's close. I'll get back to the Jack Carr thing very quickly, but Lillet Blanc, the one sin about that, because that's typically what I make Vespers with, is easiest to find. It no longer has quinine in it. So quinine was one of the things that Lillet used to have in it.
Yeah.
So Quino Lillet had the quinine, the French, and being in Malaysia or whatever else, worried about malaria, and so the quinine in their liquor was kind of a thing that happened. Well, it adds a really bitter flavor. They pulled that out over the years, and so the Vesper made with the Lillet Blanc, a lot of people consider to be the unofficial, not quite. There's this another great liquor called Cochi Americano, which has the quinine in it still, and it's another hardened liqueur, and so it gives you a more authentic flavor.
Is it kind of like adding Malort to it?
Sure. Because I mean, if you had one before, it almost kind of has like my friends that don't like liquor tell me that it tastes like Lysol or Pine Sol maybe, because it's very lemony, but it's 3 shots of gin, 1 of vodka, and half a measure of what we just described, and that's the mixer. So it's 4.5 shots of liquor with a lemon twist.
Yeah.
Not for the faint
Not
of
faint
heart.
of heart. It's a very dangerous thing. I just want to, if we're on this dangerous tangent, so 2020, I discovered those because we just got done watching all the Daniel Craig's, and
So
we
you
were
obligated to make one.
Yeah, so we were actually, it was really nice where we were at. There was a French art college, and part of that was a mixology school.
That's really
and
cool.
so they actually had like a bar at the basement of our apartment complex that was ran by the college, and for all their kids to try things out. So
I mean, that beats having like the barber shop where they mess up your hair, right?
exactly, yeah. It's they would try front drinks out every so often, and I was really invested in the Vesper Martinis. One, because Romania is stupid cheap. I think it was paying like $1.50 per. And
That's a little different than 25.
Yes, a lot different. and then New Year's Eve, I goofed up and drank it, a pint of it, alongside with like half a bottle of scotch. And next thing I knew, I was waking up like 4:00 in the afternoon. So,
yeah, my tactical error last year at SHOT Show is there's a great bar called Vesper Bar in the Cosmopolitan, And so I do most of my personal business there.
Okay.
So I'm there with Alchemy usually, Alchemy and Cabot 1911. And so wherever my friends go, I go. And then usually one night everyone kind of does their thing and meets up with the people they need to meet up with. And so I usually just post up at that bar and have drinks with a few people, do my thing, check all the things off, say hello. Well, I made the tactical error of not having dinner prior to sitting down and had 3 of those.
Oh, yeah. That will do it.
It was lovely. And then made my way up. There's a great little secret pizza is what they call it, like a little bar. You have to like go down this like hallway that's no wider than a standard person. You go through it, and there's a pizza restaurant at the end of it. So walked home with a 2-foot long box of pizza, just crushing it. Because I'm like, this is a necessity.
But we'll continue on with SHOT Show and everything. Let's go back to Jack
Carr.
Carr.
I'm so sorry.
You and your wife go on vacation once a year.
So my wife and I go on vacation once a year, and on the way down, she wanted to bring the dog, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's totally great. We were going to Texas. We were going to go to the beach, and we bring the pup. Pup's getting anxious in the car. I'm like, well, let's grab some children's Benadryl, tame her down. Walk into a CVS, and I'm doing that, and I see the paperback of The Terminalist.
Yeah.
The Chris Pratt edition. The show was coming out like a month later, and I had a personal rule from growing up. I feel like I grew up in the era of like children's or young adult fiction being adapted into film.
Yeah.
And so I grew up going, I need to read it first, this, that, and the other, and people have been tagging me in Jack's stuff for a really long time because he still does a lot of like Bond posts, like this gun was in Skyfall, or were you there when this movie came out, or trivia fact about this, and so people would always tag me in the comments, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Have a week off. I forgot to pack a book, Leap of Faith for the beach. Let's do it. We get there first day. I read just the foreword of the book, so like I'm sorry, the preface, so like the little sniper sequence, and then my wife's like, hey, let's go somewhere else. And so we pack up, and I just take a quick photo of the gun, the gun, my Beretta 418, so the Bond gun, great little beach carry, the paperback, and then an opened red stripe, which is the Bond beer, with a pair of sunglasses. I do a quick post, and I'm genuine when I say it. Like, those few pages read to me like a Fleming short story. I'm like, this is very Ian. And that's all my touch point was. I'm like, this reads, it makes me want to read it like an Ian Fleming novel. It's in the same like concept, style, feeling, emotion. And I talk about that. Well, Jack, because he's really good at the socials for sure, immediately liked the post, shared it, and commented, thank you so much on it. I quickly sent him a DM. I'm like, hey, like, I'm already loving the book. Like, based on what I've seen, really love what you do. Here's the kind of things I do. The little stump speech I gave you about pop culture my mission here. And he followed me back immediately. And he and I just started an authentic friendship around James Bond and guns. And that was 2 years ago. And so, from there, things kind of just kept going along. But that's why when I say, like, I feel friends first, because I wasn't, like, worshiping at the foot of, like, the 6 books that or the 5 books, 6 going on at that time that he had out, and, like, hanging on every word. It was just a complete happenstance thing, which is such a blessing. Because he's an awesome guy, first and foremost. Aside from the books, aside from anything else, I don't care, rich, poor, whatever. He's the kind of guy that you'd do anything for. Because he would do it for you.
Well, that's what's so nice. Like you hear, like, you rarely hear about those kind of stories coming from, like, Instagram these days, especially when it comes to authors and when it comes to actually people influencing some sort of culture. Usually it's the everyone hangs on 1 or 2 of the big guys and then just kind of ride that gravy train as long as they can, then dump it for the next one. Mm-hmm. It's awesome that you guys are actually building some sort of friendship out of it. Yeah, that's not correlated with this stuff, but
there's like real rapport to it, because we were talking about things that both impacted us, early on in life, and continue to impact us today and stuff like that. And so that was really fun. And so Jack and I built an authentic relationship around James Bond, and then out of the blue, the 6th book comes out, and he sends it my way. I get a box. I actually get 2 in the mail. He tells me to expect 1, the pre-publication box, and I'm like super stoked. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I get it, but I go to pull it out of the locker. I'm still in the apartment at this time, and I go to pull it out of the locker, and it's clearly not the book. So I've seen people open the boxes, and it's a lot smaller. I'm like, what is this? And then I open another locker, and there's the book. So I don't know what the second box is. So I go home, I open the one that I don't understand first, and it's the Aries Watch Co. edition that he did for that book.
Oh, yeah?
So a custom watch. Oh. It's got his logo on it and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But this, I really just want to emphasize, because this kind of person and thoughtfulness he puts into stuff. That was a limited run, so they were serialized. So he held aside number 007 is what the case back says.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's really cool to begin with. But then he had it engraved with my name on the case back. So it has my name, number 007, the case, the watch, the whole 9 yards. So for me, it's just one of the most special things.
Yeah, Jack seems like one of those guys like that would just do all those, like, go way out of his way just to make that one touch point with you.
Yeah, no reason for it. I mean, we just talked and bantered back and forth about all sorts of things, and he was like, "Hey, just really thought you should have that." It was just, and he did the same thing with his Triple Out Design jacket the other day. He did a really great collaboration with them, and I had been doing stuff with them too, actually. They found me through Jack, which was really cool, and he's just a really good guy. And so, in terms of like how we collaborate, we talk about Bond stuff and this and that, and this last book was his 007th. And so, you know, one of the things he kind of told me out of the gate was he wanted it to be a celebration of James Bond. There's going to be some quiet nods. There was going to be some ones that are probably a little more overt.
Just spoiler it for everybody here. We might have some slight spoilers. So if it's September 1st, you have not read.
It's been a few months.
Yeah. If you have not read Sky Morning, this is the time to pause it. Come back later once we're not going to have any hard spoilers because Mark here hasn't read it because he's a Neanderthal.
I'll keep the rule like this. I'll make it really simple. If it appeared in Jack's gear guide, which was posted on social media, I will include it. So, you know, like particular weapons or clothing pieces, like for instance, the Sunspell pullover from Casino Royale that I'm wearing right now.
Didn't he also have the Ridgeline supply jacket in?
Yep. No Time to Die and the Globetrotter luggage, which is also in there. That was included. So like little moments like that. And then there's a lot of ones that are super esoteric. If you've read the book, Jack gave me the opportunity recently to write a blog about some of my favorite Bond references because he kind of challenged me. He texted me and the book signature says the same thing as well. He's like, see if you can catch all these. And I tracked about 55 and he's like, I forgot about half of those because I mean, really his subconscious as a lifelong Bond fan, when he's like trying to write a moment that feels like Bond, he just threw it in there, which I think is super fun.
Well, yeah, I think that was like the big ones I picked up, especially when a certain main character was in a certain country doing a certain thing.
Right. but then there's like little lifestyle moments, right?
Yes.
Like he makes, Katie makes some coffee at one point, and it's with an American Chemex, which James Bond is very particular about everything, especially in the novels, and he makes his coffee in the novel From Russia with Love in an American Chemex coffee maker, Barry Black.
Okay, so it's
just little moments like that, and then they get even more esoteric. Like the product placement ones are kind of easy. And I say product placement, but you know what I mean? Like when you hear a product name, it's a little easier to just do a quick reference point and go, okay, where else did this appear? But there's locations. Yeah. There's moods. There's moments that you kind of have to like rabbit hole down to understand them. But they're fascinating and super fun. And so I don't know what I wouldn't take credit for anything. Jackson gave me more credit than I ever deserve. But you know, he and I would just riff about Bond in general, and I think that hopefully, in addition to him being a Bond fan, influenced some of those moments and things. But where we got to have a ton of fun was he texted me one night and said, hey, we're going to do the shot-through editions for this book here pretty soon, which if you're not familiar with Jack's work, he does this amazing program to celebrate and promote independent small bookstores, where he does a limited version of his book that is I think both signed and shot through from a gun relevant to the novel. Yeah. And those are only sold at local bookstores.
Oh, okay.
And so
I see where this is going now.
Yeah. So it was really, really cool. And so he reaches out to me and said, hey, he's like, I have a primary gun probably, but I want a Bond gun on scene that day too. I might use it for the shot through, might use it for something else, and it might just be there. What do you got? Do you have any good ideas? I'm like, well, that's funny you mention that because at SHOT Show, I was standing at the Alchemy booth and some guys walked up to me from named Josh from Allegheny Arms. You know, forgive me, I'm not from Pennsylvania and understand those phraseologies, but he makes really great threaded barrels. He actually specializes in all sorts of crazy gunsmithing in general, but one of the things that he's done in the past was a 380 to 32 conversion barrel for the Berettas. So like for the Cheetah or the 81 BB and stuff like that, where he can take it, thread it. Great. So he approached me and said, hey man, I've got a threaded barrel for a Walther PPK that doesn't have a home. If you send me a gun, I'll press it in if you're interested. I said, I will have one to you as soon as I get home. And
just take this one.
Yeah, exactly. So So
Just kidding. We cannot have loaded firearms on the shot show
definitely
floor.
did not have a loaded firearm on the
No
shot
one
show
has
floor.
them
Not a single soul
Not
in
a
that
single.
building.
because there's not been a single shooting there. So
That's absolutely right. And they have technology now where they can scan people on camera as they're walking through the corridors, and they can actually see.
yeah, it's just fancy thermals. If you're carrying a full size Glock in a appendix holster, they're going to see it. But if you bond it up a bit, you probably can get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well,
anyways,
I think that's my life story in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I reach out. I hit Jack back, and I'm like, well, it's funny you mentioned that. I have this threaded barrel Walther. Would you be interested in doing that? And I can get you a silencer. Silencer Co was going to reach out to me. They reached out to me. They were going to send me a can anyway. I'm like, they're in Utah. They're by you. I'm sure they can get you a demo can. We can make this all work. And so I got to kind of like bring this bond moment together for Jack, where there was a threaded barrel Walther PPK with a silencer on set, and he released this super fun Bond video the other day. It was kind of a Bond homage. He like shoots through glass and the whole 9 yards on Instagram. And we released my blog about the Bond references in Red Sky Morning with that video. And that gun is now my daily carry. It wasn't in my collection beforehand. I had sent Al Gahini a gun, and Josh made a mistake. No fault to him at all. He had accidentally cut the barrel for a 380 diameter, and then cut it down to 32 on the inside. Trouble with that being the housing, when you press the barrel in, is different in overall dimension in a standard 32 and a standard 380.
Yeah.
So he needed a 380 gun to put that barrel in, and I had sent him a 32 thinking it was a 1-to-1 because that's what he had told me. So a private collector that I'm friends with, and that also had a touch point with Jack, funny enough, we had used his private collection for my book. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, I've got this exact gun that I would need with the serial number so you can pull it out of your collection. Could you send it to this gunsmith? They would go to Jack afterwards. And he's like, yeah, man, I can do that. No problem at all. And then it came back to me afterwards, and he said, do not send it back. It's yours. So that gun to me means a lot because it's in my book that's releasing soon. Which
we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah. I'm not expecting you to shield too hard. I'll do my part. But, it's in my book now, which is like incredibly cool.
Yeah.
Jack got to use it to market his book, which is even cooler. And now it's a gun that I can rely on every day, and we were just shooting together.
I mean, the magazine, we have to work on that.
Yep.
But
well, I think I ruined the 1967 magazine by shooting it overly suppressed, which such is life. But, that's why God made springs as a perishable item. I can put new ones in there.
No, I mean, it was a great shooting little gun. Like it, and it's so cool. I mean, I know you and I've talked about this. It's very easy to get lost in I need the latest, and I'm going to steal this from Night Fighter, the latest pew pew from PP Poo Poo Tactical, because I'll get killed in the streets if I don't have it. But it's a very different experience when there's like a little bit of a touch point with these great people, like Jack Carr. The little story behind the 32 I got was I spent a lot of time with DB, Daryl Bulkey, at SHOT Show, and nothing as close as yours, but he spent a lot of time selling me the gun.
Yeah, the Lipsy's exclusive, right?
Yeah, the Lipsy's exclusive 32. And so that gun's just cool to me because I was there, I tested, I played with it. I had the guy who created it standing right beside me saying, "This is why this is so cool." And I
totally get that. I mean, I say this a lot. It's never just a piece of steel. And you're being disingenuous if you claim that it's just a piece of steel, or if you're part of a more unfortunate demographic in the firearm space, just a piece of polymer with some steel on top of it. Steel frame supremacy is there for a reason.
And one of the things that I think was really cool, especially about today, as we're recording, we spent about 2 hours in the afternoon out at the range with John from AOR Dynamics. If I can get that out there. So I want to say a quick thank you to John for arranging our shoot. We got to shoot and
running some awesome drills. He did a great job by kind of admitting us.
Oh yeah, exactly. and on top of that, we got to shoot your PPK.
Yeah.
We got to shoot
against superior Bulgarian Makarov.
Yes, we got the dissident
it's okay to be wrong.
Killer, right? So for me, who has never shot either one of those pistols, even though I own a bring home PPK from Germany, with the Dirty Bird on it. Being able
From the
to
World War II Germans.
yes, the being able to shoot both of those and compare them, it was just a lot of fun, and a way to kind of step back and look at where we got to here from then and the different developments and do they shoot better, do they shoot worse, so on and so forth. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Well, what's always cool about doing like shoots like this is, as Mark was talking about, it's always cool to go back to see what was the norm there and how it's still the norm today.
Yeah.
I know
the PPK, obviously, the Makarov is a clone and homage to some degree of the PPK.
I would say homage more of like, oh, we're too tired, we steal.
As I say, homage is a very friendly term for people that I should not be friendly to as a good American. And so it's it's highway robbery for sure. But people make fun of the PPK occasionally, or accuse me or Walther for being outdated for either still producing it or, in my case, still carrying it every day.
Yeah.
But the reality is, the gun when it was designed was one of the most revolutionary pistols ever. They had a patent on the decocker safety combination. The patent was so strong, by the way, that they sued Mauser during World War II for the HSC.
Yeah.
So the Mauser HSC came out during the war, very reminiscent in terms of style of the PPK, but what they sued over was the fact that it was a double single action pistol that had a decocker safety combo.
Yeah.
And so if you get a later production HSC, which I have one from like 1944, I think, the suit happened mid-war, like 42, 43 is when the lawsuit happened.
Yeah.
Walther won. And so you buy a later edition version of the Mauser, the decocker does not function because they had to stop using Walther's proprietary technology.
Well,
this is the middle of the Second World War. Walther enforced a patent successfully, which is incredible.
And then it's even weirder because now it's like if you don't have a safety decocker on most things, like a double single action,
it's expected. But back in the day, the standard defensive carry, especially in Europe, was those pocket 25 striker fired pistols, and those had a nasty habit of negligently discharging. They would carry in the vest pocket and things like that, and there wasn't a striker block or anything like that. So you get a good bump on the gun, you're going to have an ND. And so Walther over-engineered the pistol in terms of safety. Double action, single action, check. Had a manual safety, spectacular. Hell, it had a decocker.
Yeah.
So it had these couple passive safeties and an active safety associated with it. And so it was a very revolutionary gun. And so, what is old is new, as always.
Yeah.
And so I find the gun to be fascinating because I think it still informs firearms technology today. And the P99, which is the other famous Bond gun for sure. I mean, you guys got to handle mine today.
Yeah.
I think what's really important about it is it emphasizes how effective bringing old technology into the new world can be, because it's got the double single action capability and a decocker on a striker fire pistol, and you felt a sub-tenth of an inch reset on a gun that was designed in 1997 that beats out what most people would do to their standard Glock today with a ghost trigger or whatever the case may be. And that's what it came out of the box like. And I think that's important, right?
No, it's definitely what I absolutely love about just doing sort of this stuff, especially with the PPKs that you have. We shot a couple J frames, a couple revolvers, the Makarovs. It's just those classic. These have been in people's pockets, defending people's lives. Hundreds, maybe like 100, 150 years.
Yeah, you're coming up on 100 years for the PPK because it was invented in the early 30s.
And most J frames were about the late 1800s or early 19s.
Yeah, say it depends on what you consider a J frame, right?
Because snub nose,
the snub nose revolver in general, 32 Smith & Wesson long, especially was that era. But like you didn't get like the pocket hammer or the Chief special size until like the 50s.
Yeah. Okay.
Which those are super cool, and the story about that is one that I really enjoyed finding out about.
My favorite one is always the I know your boy Eli just got one, the Fit Special.
Oh yeah,
and listening to that, just people like Chuck Haggard and Daryl just talking all about how awesome those like how the development of how this guy was.
Yeah, a bare knuckles boxer.
Yeah,
determining the best gunfighting capabilities, and I mean his gun literally pioneered the Colt Cobra series. Like a compact Colt did not exist until someone custom manufactured so many at the Colt factory that they felt the need to come up with its own SKU.
And then the removal of the trigger guard is just on top of it as well. And it's fun to watch, especially. I mean, you're a big buff. We'll talk a little about the book as well, because I think that's what really will kind of tie this entire rant together, is how companies will come out with something, and the inputs that come from the people who are actually using it are actually being implemented, and being
use cases inform reality, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's, I mean, I would say that's kind of the story of the Fit Special. It's kind of the story of
that's
the
definitely
Chiefs.
the story of like the Centennial Airweight.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a CIA operative who was carrying a 32 Smith & Wesson Long, and it almost killed him. He was carrying it down in Mexico on behalf of the CIA, and he went to shoot somebody, and it didn't put him down. And so he went to the CEO at the time of Smith & Wesson and said, I need a smaller gun and a proper cartridge.
Yeah.
And so that's where like the lemon squeezer style Centennial Airweight came out. And now the 642 series, right, is kind of like a staple for self-defense, pocket carrier, backup carrier.
Yeah.
And that all came from real use case scenario driving a business decision.
So, allude to it. We have a book coming out.
Yeah, very soon.
It's the 19th of August when we're recording, but here in about 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, hoping in the next month. I won't nail down a date definitively.
That's fair.
But soon. We'll just say soon.
Soon.
We'll be in pre-sale for the book via Kickstarter, which is how Headstamp does all their books.
Okay.
Headstamp Publishing, who I partnered with to put this thing together, have been incredible. Folks might be familiar with them for their collaboration with Larry Vickers, the Vickers Guide series, kind of like the gold standard for
coffee table firearms
books, because they're not only like really beautiful and elegant, they're also super informative. And so you've got that series, and then you've also got Ian McCollum's series, the books that he's written, like the Small Arms of World War II and all that stuff. And so we are doing a book. I have written it, and I have been blessed to have a lot of creative input into the project as well, celebrating the world of James Bond and his firearms. And the title of the book is Licensed Troubleshooter, The Guns of James Bond. And Licensed Troubleshooter spans not just the cinematic Bond that you may be familiar with, but also the literary James Bond. And not just the Ian Fleming novels, but also all continuation novels. So while obviously, because of the scope of the work I just described to you, every single gun that ever touches Bond's hand won't be included. I've carefully curated what I believe to be the most important firearms from the world of James Bond. And we have captured them. We have not only told their story in relationship to James Bond that people might know, like obviously they see a PPK in every movie. That's really cool. But I think the story that we get to share with them here, which is so fascinating, is the actual story of these firearms. In the same way we were just alluding to with like how use cases inform reality. You know, I've gone through and I've talked to Navy SEALs, I've talked to CIA operatives, DSS operatives, British commandos about their application of the arms of James Bond in the real world. And so we're in the same way at the top where I described kind of my passion and what I do with my channel here, right, which is the blending of pop culture and reality through the lens of James Bond. I wanted this book to also do that, because these guns don't exist in some sort of cinematic vacuum. It's not the blaster used by a stormtrooper, which is, you know, while it is just a mock-up World War II pistol or whatever the case may be, or, you know, submachine gun, it exists in that world and that world exclusively. I can tell you stories of how Mac V. Sog used a Walther in combat. And remind you that this is not something that is completely isolated to a fictional hero. Real-world heroes and real-world everyday citizens have used these tools and rely on these tools. And that's something that I didn't want to get lost with this book.
And it's what's awesome to see, like, you know, there you go.
Thank you.
What's always great to see when it comes to these tools is the PPK is about to hit 100 years?
Hitting 100 years soon,
It's still being made.
Still being made.
It's not being changed.
We just re-released the 19. I say we. I got to do the photography for it, but
we'll get to the we part of that.
The 7.65 millimeter or 32 automatic, if you're an American, Walther PPK has been relaunched, which is just fantastic.
And it hasn't been changed. It's not like we added it's almost like the Beretta did with the Bobcat and the Tomcat, where they don't do
it's like hyper redux.
Yes.
The PPK, for all intents and purposes, aside from some aesthetic changes that have made and like in 1911, where
Yeah.
small aesthetic moments and things have adjusted over the years, you are still at the core the same base gun.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
And it sucks because it's not the Interarms or the Fort Smith ones everyone's used to. These are actually Walther branded ones, correct?
Yeah, well, Fort Smith is where Walther is. You're thinking like Smith and Wesson.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah, these are not licensed duplicates, which happened thanks to an awful law passed in 1968. The GCA, the Gun Control Act of 1968, prohibited the importation of arms that did not meet a certain set of criteria. Some of them included, like for the PPK, certain size and weight requirements. The Walther PPK failed both. So Walther no longer was able to import the gun to the United States. And so in order to get the people the gun that they might actually want versus the PPK-S, which is where for the layman, is basically the Glock 43X of the PPK world, where it's the PPK slide and barrel on a full-size Walther PP frame.
Yeah.
Completely different gun, but similar. The PPK needed to be produced domestically in the United States.
Yes.
And so Interarms / Ranger manufactured for a while. Smith & Wesson infamously manufactured for a while.
Yep, that's a good way to put it.
You know, for I think the 15 years of manufacturing, the vast majority of those guns got recalled for negligent discharges and all sorts of horrifying things.
Yep.
But yeah, so Walther is now, for the first time in a long time, and the first time historically ever in the United States, is manufacturing a Walther PPK entirely from the ground up themselves in the United States.
So, which is awesome because I owned a PPK for a little bit at one point. I bought it at a gun auction for like $250 because no one wanted it.
Yep,
it was great. It was a silver 380. I think it was Interarms one.
Yeah, real short beaver tail.
Yep.
Interarms.
And I luckily it was the two out of the two times I've ever had to pull a gun on somebody defensively. One was that PPK.
That's fascinating.
And then 2 weeks later, I went to the range and realized the ammo I was using was not working properly, which is a very scary moment.
That's terrifying.
And
it's
so
a lot of hubris right there, right?
It's like, oh, well, this could have gone really, really south. It's kind of like somewhat similar to what we had today, where just a lot of just minor errors. You could work through it, but something that you now know.
Oh, shoot, I shot this thing suppressed for ages. I need to actually clean the firing pin assembly, right? Like, it's a big difference.
No,
but it's sobering.
No, but I mean, I'm not. Again, you have a reason why mine was this because it's Interarms PPK.
No, I get it. I totally get it. But I know what you mean. It's like it's sobering to go, hey, I thought I had this tool set up for success, and I'm setting myself up to some degree for failure.
Yeah,
and that's for we are perfectionists.
Yes,
especially in this type of craft, right? Because at the end of the day, we're staking our lives, and not just like people put a lot of hubris into what they do. Like I promote and recommend and enjoy the PPK, and so sure, my ego is associated with the gun performing well, but to me, that's not really the important part. I sold guns for the first 8 years of my life professionally.
Yeah,
I didn't have a high school job at McDonald's. At 17, I was selling a handgun to somebody for their self-defense purposes. I took that very seriously. I researched and read everything I could about modern handguns and what was out there, what was recommended, what was failing, and this and that, because I wasn't commission-based like I jokingly told you guys earlier today. I just wanted to sleep well at night. I wanted to give people the best tool possible for their safety. And so when you fail that for yourself, it's a very scary moment.
Yeah, it's very sobering.
So my question on that specific point, from your experience, what in your mind pops up as the number one firearm that people purchased? And to caveat to that, I guess, what was the one that you really kind of guided people to?
Yeah. So obviously, and
why was it the Glock 19?
I say it was always the Glock 19, right? But this was before, when I started out, it was a couple years before the 365 series took off, right? And so the single stack 9mm, like the M&P Shield or the XD series, was kind of the ultimate 9mm single stack gun, which, to toot the horn for Walther, that Walther pioneered with the PPS.
Yeah.
Everything else is just a carbon copy of it. And so if it was a concealed carry pistol, and that was kind of the parameters that they set, they always came in to me because at the time Walther's marketing wasn't the best, and they really focused on the law enforcement market.
Yeah.
That's what they really succeeded with on the international scene, and they were trying to figure out the United States scene. They hadn't built their U.S. team that they have today, which is phenomenal. I'll talk about an example of that in a moment. But so what I would do is very strategic about it. I would show them what they asked for first, obviously. So like the Shield 2.0 or the Shield Standard. And then I'd walk them over to the XD and talk to them why I didn't prefer the XD and why it had, aside from just the sheer ugliness of the gun, the grip zone reminded me more of a crummier version of like a Michael Bay Transformer movie than actual stippling or checkering or whatever. And so, but what I would end on was the gun they didn't ask about, which was the Walther PPS M2, which for the price point was phenomenal. It still is. Don't get me wrong. It's still for me. If you're getting into a single stack 9mm, the gun I recommend the most, especially the LE package edition. It comes with night sights and 3 mags, and it's sub the price of your standard one like that. And so I would end them on that gun, and 9 times out of 10 they walked away with that gun. There was a joke. I was part-time. I was just there through high school and college. When I came back, my buyer, who was my friend, would increase the quantity of Walthers they were purchasing to accommodate the sales that I was bringing in.
So you've been working for Walther for quite some time, just unbeknowingly.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, like I am a fan of the brand and I believe in the brand. It's not just like, oh well, James Bond carried it, therefore it's good. No, they make phenomenal pistols, and they just happen to be used by a pop culture icon. So for me, it was a very happy coincidence. Like, I mean, life would have been a lot harder for me if James Bond was really into the High Point series.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that would have been a very difficult world. Like, the worst Bond gun you ever see on screen, which I had to cover in my book, which broke my heart, was Timothy Dalton in License to Kill is not holding a Beretta 92. No, sir. He is carrying a Taurus PT 92.
Oh, man.
And the armorer bragged about it in a book that he had selected the Taurus over the Beretta. And so, as someone who is going to be completionist someday in his life on the collection of James Bond firearms, I've emotionally had to handle the fact that I will have to buy a Taurus PT-92.
Well, I think Caleb Giddings, I guess he's the lead marketer for Taurus USA, has bragged about that several times in some sort of post.
For sure. And the interesting thing, too, is you brought up 2 things that really strikes a chord with me is the very first pistol I ever bought was a XD45.
Yeah.
That was in, I want to say, 2005. I had that for maybe 2 years. And then Kansas opened up, concealed carry. You can start concealed carrying in here. I guess it was 3 years. That was about 2008. I sold that, actually traded it in for Walther PPS because I knew that slim line. Yeah, it was single stack, but I knew that was going to be so much easier to carry than an XD45.
That's actually kind of like very similar to my story. So my first handgun was a SIG 227.
Yeah,
the single stack 9. East German. German Pulse I turn in.
It's rad as hell.
I got it, and it was going to be my concealed carry gun. Turns out not the greatest. So then I did the abomination. I sold it and bought a Burst of Thunder. Because
there's no forgiveness for that.
I mean,
listen, I'm a Catholic. You should go see a priest. we have this thing called confession, and where we go and we talk about our sins in front of God. I strongly encourage you.
In my defense, I was a broke college kid. I could only have like one handgun.
I'll tell you a story about a broke college kid.
But then I did sell it, and that's how it funded my PPK. And unfortunately, that burst shot better than the Interarms PPK. Now, if I would understand.
Yeah, totally. If you bought a pre-war or post-war or anything that was actually a Walther and that's the biggest unfortunate thing for Walther over the years was because they were kind of chained into a licensing situation.
Yeah.
The brand suffered dramatically in the United States.
Yeah.
It really had some hard years where people were being served because what did people want? They wanted the PPK. And the same reason why Smith & Wesson sells a ton of Model 29s and why there's because people saw Dirty Harry and they wanted the gun. The gun tells a story, and so people that's the Walther. And what's unfortunate is when that's the gun and that's the one that's being not produced at your standard, it has severe ramifications. And Walther's, I think, to some degree, still kind of recovering from that. I mean, they relaunched the PPK in 2020 at Fort Smith. And the PDP came out a few years later, and it is a phenomenal pistol. And when I said earlier, I'll fight you on that.
Yeah.
when I said earlier about like the marketing team being absolutely exceptional now, one thing that Walther USA did, and I think from all the years that I've been in the industry and from what I've seen beforehand or whatever as well, you can tell me if I'm wrong, because I think, you have children my age.
He does. I don't. I got a 2-year-old. You're not 2.
The launch of the Walther PDP was the most flawless firearms like platform launch that has ever been performed on the market. And I'll tell you why. When the gun came out, some moron, some kid of some executive leaked the gun 4 days early.
Yeah.
But guess what? The guns were already at dealers in all SKU styles. So all frame sizes, barrel lengths, etc. were already at the dealer. So they were ready for that. So it launched 4 days early. Well, the gun was already in stores, which is, okay, cool. You've got a gun. Well, the gun wasn't alone. The gun had magazines that already came with it. So they had standard capacity and extended round magazines at stores. And they also had, I believe, 3 holster SKUs. Like they had, and it wasn't just like, well, Uncle Mike's will fit it. They had like a Tenacore right out of the gate. I mean, they had quality Kydex on, like, ready for you to order online and have at your door when the gun dropped. And I think, to me, when we see firearms platforms released throughout, you're waiting 6-8 months for the gun to even come out, and then you're waiting another 9 months for Safariland to catch up, and then another 12 months for a spare magazine, and maybe you'll get sights at some point. Well, you know what? Walther with the PDP, they said, we accept that the Glock is the standard on the marketplace, so our sights are cut for a Glock.
Yeah.
So you can buy your Trijicon sights that you like tomorrow and put them on the gun you bought today, and you'll be good.
So I'm going to go on my one PDP rant.
Totally.
While it is a good polymer striker fire pistol, there wasn't enough wow factor. And that's what I think you and I kind of talked about off camera is, like, at the end of the day, a polymer striker fire pistol, especially for duty use, is going to be the most blandest thing in the world. And it's just going to be boringly reliable. And because for me on duty, I carry a Glock 17.
Sure.
Got the Acro P2. I got a light on that thing, and it's just one of those guns. I'll go out to that range and do those drills that John was doing, sub like 4-second bear drills. And you're like, cool, that was fun. Let me recreate this 8 or 10 times. But then coming out to the range today and shooting like PPKs and Makarovs and J frames, it's actually started to be, one, a challenge again, and then 2, it's just fun. It's cool. I don't think anybody did not have a smile on their face after shooting some of these guns.
No, I think that comes down to people ask me about this occasionally because of who I associate with, but like the soullessness of like polymer versus like steel frame and storytelling, right? Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, the PDP, it's a very reliable and very, I think, in terms of the marketplace spread, because of Walther's trigger system, because of the super terrain, and because of the stippling pattern that they selected. I like the Walther ergonomics better than most factory guns. Yeah, and I like the triggers more than factory guns. Now, to your point, in terms of like what's exciting about it, what are you adding, like a 20% metric? And is that enough to get you to transition off a handgun that you've used your whole life, like a Glock, and you have 80 magazines for?
Yeah.
It might be a hard sell. Now, for me, when they launch like a steel frame version of that gun, and it's a whole different animal, that's a really cool day. No, I mean, I relate the PDP. I jokingly describe Walther handguns in the same fashion of like a Batmobile. Like, each actor has their definitive car. Michael Keaton drove, a very badass, sleek-lined vehicle. Well, to me, that's like a P99 or a Walther PDP, or I'm sorry, the PPQ, where like the lines are softer, the roll marks are more thoughtful. The gun has more of like a je ne sais quoi. Like, it has that feeling. You just pick it up and you're like, okay, cool, it's polymer frame, but it has a vibe, as the kids would say, right? Whereas the PDP is a hell of a lot more like Christian Bale's Tumbler. It's there to do the job and do it very, very well. And it has aggressive as hell lines to do it. And so that's, to me, where it kind of falls. Like, people are like, well, what you think is interesting when you hear the conversation, when people talk to me and they're like the new Bond gun or a full-size companion to the PPK, if you'll acknowledge that the PPK is going nowhere, is they prefer the PPQ over the PDP because of the aesthetics, which I think tells that story very well.
Well, we have to give credit to Walther too is with the PDP 380 that came out with and starting to have that like almost James Bond.
Yeah, the PK 380. No. So Cody Osborne, the marketing guy one of the marketing guys over at Walther, is a genius. He and I had so much fun. He talked to me about this launch that they were going to do with Walther Man or W Man as they called it, and they did these phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal, cinematic trailers for their guns. And they started with the PK 380 or the PD 380. I'm sorry, which was a reskin of the PK series. So it's better ergonomics. It brings a quintessential gun, which I recommended the PK 380 a lot for folks talking about guns that were like, because it was a really good price point gun. I would have rather sold you that over a Taurus, because while it didn't have any frills, at least it came from a good manufacturer who I know for a fact would take care of you, and it wouldn't take it going to Brazil to get fixed if something went wrong.
If getting fixed at all.
Right. If you see it at all, it's going to come back from the holiday someday. But the PD 380 was that first iteration of the W Man, and then they launched the steel frame PDP series with another cinematic trailer with this guy, and it was so much fun. I mean, the thoughtfulness that went into that campaign, I think it really talks about how Walther is self-aware of how people associate with their brand. People want storytelling. They want the elevated feeling of Walther. They don't want another spec sheet. They don't care about another spec sheet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be one of Glock's big downfalls as someone who is probably like on James Reeves level of Glock shilling. Is it's just at SHOT Show you get a new data sheet of today we were releasing the Glock 49, and it's the Gen 3 lower on a Gen 5 upper that is a 17 and a 19, and you're like, I mean, that's wonderful, but what is that supposed to do? And it's not. There's no that je ne sais quoi behind it. There's no that.
There's no soul.
There's no soul.
At the end of the day, there's no soul. I mean, if you want to drive a Nissan Altima every day, you enjoy that Nissan Altima, but don't lie to yourself about it being the best car on the market. That's, to me, like, I don't live in the world where I'm like, well, sure, what I prefer is dramatically better. I mean, I might personally feel that I made a better choice and I really enjoy it, but yeah, great. Your Glock works. And to me, when I was selling guns, to your previous question, I had a very strict set of rules that I would do. It was had to be from a quality manufacturer, had to be a gun you would actually carry consistently, and had to be a gun you would shoot often. And the reason, there's a very strong reason why quality manufacturer was at the first, because reliability is the most important thing. And sure, Glock does a great job of that, but imagine you're looking at like the Maslow hierarchy of needs pyramid.
Yeah.
If the gun you were carrying only like fulfills the base, which is shelter and food, are you reaching that penultimate or that ultimate? Which I say penultimate there because the whole concept of that pyramid is you'll never reach like that total like absolution of happiness, right? Are you scaling the ladder? You can drive the beater car your whole life, but if you got the capital, why wouldn't you do something like a Walther PPK or like what I said? Like I cycle between that and a hand-built 1911.
Yeah. So let's talk about. So great transition to the hand-built 1911s. We didn't get to shoot it today because you didn't bring any 45, but we got to dry fire.
Hey, it's Joe Biden's economy.
Yeah, it's somebody's economy. I don't know if it belongs to Joe Biden right now. We don't know who it belongs to right now.
No, you're right. It's the current Democrat, the coup giver.
It's them. It's theys. It's their economy. It's like their democracy, their economy.
It's all about the buzzwords.
So, let's talk a little bit about you and your relationship with Alchemy. First of all, what is Alchemy Arms for those who are poor and still buying, I don't know, Olights and Tauruses and review them on YouTube?
Yeah, if you're looking for guns that catch on fire and or blow up in your pocket,
or both,
you're in a different world. But it's okay because I'm here to bring the light to you. Alchemy Custom Weaponry and Cabot Guns, they are sister companies that I've been very, very blessed to be a small member of the family of. One of my best friends in the world, Eli Duckworth, is the sales marketing guy for Alchemy. He's what
Mr. Thighs himself.
I really, really, and I mean it when I say it, not just because we're friends, but we became friends because of his authenticity. In the same way I told like the Jack Carr story, he and I just kind of fell together because we were young marketing professionals in this industry. Not a lot of guys are our age, have our kind of viewpoints, and are in the marketing in this space where we take it like, I'm not trying to disparage, but like in a very serious capacity. Like at the core, we take it very seriously, and then we like to have fun.
Yeah.
And I think and it's not like it's going to be really crass, and that's what we consider fun. Like that's not where we're at. It's like, well, yeah, like we're gonna have a great time, and it's going to be awesome guns because if the product does so well, you can have fun and you have a great time with it. Yeah. And that's, I think, where Alchemy does such a great job. So I'll start with Alchemy, then I'll go to Cabot.
Okay.
Alchemy Custom Weaponry is a semi-custom 1911 shop that exclusively manufactures 100% United States sourced, United States manufactured steel hand-fit 1911 pistols. And that's a lot to unpack. So that is guns that are entirely produced from like raw materials. The raw materials that manufacture their steel are all from the continental United States.
Yeah.
And then those are pressed into steel that are then hand fit by a gunsmith. 1911 Syndicate did a great video with Alchemy the other day. I encourage you looking up why a hand fit gun. And Eli and Jake go across the floor and they follow the path of a 1911 being hand fit, telling its story and showing you the difference, because these pistols have like 20 hours of hand labor. You go into there and you maybe got a desk fan and a light that has power to it. Otherwise, it is hand files and sandpaper that is putting these guns together. And you felt the trigger on one of my guns from Alchemy.
The lack of a reset almost.
Right. And you felt the fitment too, right?
Yeah.
Like the barrel fit, the slide to frame fit. And what I want to emphasize about those guns in Alchemy, as a smaller custom manufacturer who is hand fitting all these guns, has 20 hours into each gun that goes out the door on just the hand fitting side. They're now in the birth year serial numbers. They're in the 2000 series now. My gun is serial number 164. It is an old marketing gun that has been rebarreled, reblued, beaten to hell, shot through a dozen times, and it still feels like that, which is pretty incredible. I think that's a pretty strong testament to the quality of the product. And so talking about, I'm all about storytelling. And so the story of that product is light years beyond what you typically see, especially in the 1911 space. And a lot of the soul of that industry has been lost. And then you have amazing people like Eli, who are living and breathing that product. And not just, and Alchemy does a great job because Eli and Nick do such a phenomenal job of, they're not selling you just on their gun. They are selling you on the world of 1911s. They're selling you on America's sidearm. It is our Excalibur as a country, right? It is like we live in a world. Eli made a great point the other day when I was talking to him that America is one of the only countries in the world that has existed exclusively within the technology of firearms. Our country was founded and firearms technology existed.
Yeah.
Like it is our, he calls it like our Claymore. It is our like definitive weapon. And I think the 1911 is the definitive American arm. And so if you're going to do that, why half-ass it? Why not go with a brand that takes the time, energy, and effort to produce, which, all those buzzwords that I say about the people and this and that, it's really cool. And the people behind it are amazing. And I really hope to shake all their hands someday soon. But the damn product follows up and delivers on top of all that. It's not just a bunch of buzzwords thrown together like a Kamala Harris word salad. It is actual
We
quality.
cannot be unburdened by what has been. We cannot be unburdened by the polymer framed striker fire pistol.
So
that's a great way to that's a great way to explain it, because you have the Middle East, the scimitars, the Mongolians with their horse mounted cross bows.
And those weapons, hell, you have the IRA putting the AR-18 on a flag.
Yes.
Like there's groups and there's countries that define themselves around the tool that created them. And I think it's disingenuous. And I think it's from a philosophical standpoint, not even just like the jest standpoint that Eli sometimes makes about like the gun or whatever.
Yeah.
But philosophically, and I know this is where he comes from too, because he has a lot of fun, but he's a very thoughtful person too, is that politically speaking, the United States became what it was today when we entered World War I.
Yeah.
When we stopped our isolationist worldview, better or worse, and we became a leader on the international stage. And then when the great power shift occurred post World War II, and Great Britain took a step back, and we became the global hegemon, what was on our soldiers' hips across the world? It was the 1911 handgun and 45 ACP.
Most of them. They still had some the 38 specials. I think they were model 10s.
Sure. Yeah, we can debate
Yeah,
semantics. I'll leave the semantics to my friend Ian.
No,
I'll leave the nuanced pieces go to
Yes.
him, but the hero gun.
The hero gun, yeah.
The hero gun, and Rob Biankin said this best, I think, is like he called it. Rob Biankin's the owner of Cabot Guns,
Yeah.
and the owner of Alchemy Custom Weaponry. He defined the 1911 very succinctly. He said, "It is the hero's gun."
Yeah, no, that checks out. No?
When you watch a movie, the bad guy's not rocking the 1911. It's the American. It's the good guy. It's the hero of the story. Hell, James Bond carried a 1911.
I would say, and this depends on what you're watching too. Like if you watch a spaghetti western, it's not going to be 1911.
No, sure.
But no,
it's the precursor to it.
No, yes. I mean, yeah. It's how many tanks did Tom Hanks take out with the 38 special?
Well, I don't know if you watched the video that launched the Fat Man series from Alchemy. Their double stack 45 pistol.
Yes,
the full video of that tells you the story that most people don't want you to know, which is that the Fat Man designation was erroneously given to a nuclear bomb, and it really was a double stack 1911 45 ACP with 230 grain hardball. Some bombardier hanging out, with the bomb doors open below him, just dropping a couple rounds out of that 45, a double stack 13 round 1911. That is what stopped. And you know what?
I mean, I can't fact check.
You can't fact check the truth. And you want it to be true in your heart. Therefore, it is in fact true. Because in a world where facts are whatever you want them to be, when I can pull up 18 stories to tell you something, hey,
my truth is that World War II was ended by some guy dropping 45s out of an airplane.
They weren't ready for you to know that.
Yes.
And so in the same way that the CIA has been directed since the mid-2000s to share the JFK paperwork, we finally unearthed through years of fighting the true paperwork describing the 45 hardball in a double stack capacity being the actual Fat Man. So there you go.
Fat Man.
And there's a great video from Eli talking about that. And all that jest about the bombardier doors and stuff was actually, I remember very, very, it was a great day. We were having lunch, the setup day for SHOT Show. Because one of the things I get to do, so you asked about like my relationship to it, I just shared the whole brand story, I guess.
Yeah.
Or some of the brand story. It's not fair to say that's the brand story. But Eli needed an extra set of hands 1 year at SHOT Show. They were desperate. I say desperate because they picked me, but they were like, hey, and Eli put himself out there, which credit to him being such an amazing friend. He said, this is the guy you need. And I was actually there repping. I've got the knife in my pocket right now, and I'll show it to you. Sandrine Knives, which is the Italian knife brand that Cabot is the exclusive importer for. They're really cool. They use a tungsten carbide steel. I won't get too into it, but anyway, I repped that. And then because I had a gun counter experience and I clearly like talking, I shilled for 1911s pretty hard as well while I was there. And so I've been there 2 years now, and I'm kind of blessed to be what I would consider and what they call me like a travel team member for Cabot and Alchemy, where I get to do these trade shows with them and have a damn good amount of time with it. Me, Nick, and Eli are sitting there for lunch on setup day after being complete at a bar, just, doing a true American thing, talking about 1911s, eating cheeseburgers. And
as the Lord intended.
As John Moses Browning and Jesus himself intended. That is how America was founded upon, right? Is to have that level of just camaraderie around a damn good gun. And we were talking and laughing. And we were talking about this Resto Mod series, and we were talking about everything they had planned for the year. And we said, what is out there? And we talked about the Fat Man. And we were joking about, we just started riffing as friends do about all the things. And yet we ended up with a bombardier opening the doors and shooting through. And I think at one point we talked about, this is how far it spiraled, was that D-Day was delayed because of the fog, but that was really good old Phil, from Groundhog Day, right? It was his fault because he predicted additional length to the winter. And so he created bad weather. Therefore, he was a Nazi plant. And so that's how far this conversation devolved before we ended up just having a double stack 1911. But I think all that is really meant to say that they make a great product, but they're better people and they know how to have a great time.
No, I mean, I guess it's pretty hard to beat, sitting down talking about 1911s, how Punxsutawney Phil is a Nazi plant. I mean,
you can't beat that. And that's like my second year there with them. And so, that's why I never use the word ultimate when I describe what this stuff is, because every experience compounds upon itself and it somehow becomes aggressively better each time.
So you've been part of the traveling team for 2 years now. So SHOT Show, I'm assuming that you've been having a blast there.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk about you. What's your favorite SHOT Show memory that you have so far? And why is it meeting us? I'm just
you at the guns.com party? Yeah.
Yeah.
As Eli's date, which was so humbling.
Well,
Well, to be there with the mustache himself.
I get to riff on this because I'm not really affiliated with anybody. That guns.com party is just what's his name? Terran Tactical bringing his weird dates and just dancing with them all night.
Oh man, and then that's the thing.
He looks like a Bond villain.
Yeah, we got into the elevator with him and his clique, his entourage.
Yeah, his little
dude.
At best I would call it like a harem.
Yeah, it's probably a couple trafficked people in there, but
I remember when Eli and I were sitting out there after I think we just got done talking to you guys or somewhere around that time. I glance over and I see her in a full Russian style fur coat with a hat and all. I'm like, wow. I've seen a lot of Bond movies, and I'm taking a photo because that's a reference image for a villain at some point. If God graces me enough to be an armorer on a Bond film, just kind of slide that over and go, who needs costuming? Just call these guys.
Well, that's probably a great, if you want to write some Bond fan fiction, just make the evil bad guy Terran Tactical.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, so favorite SHOT Show memory, that is a hard sell.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's actually working a booth. So I had been to SHOT Show previously for a number of years. The year I went with Alchemy was my first year not full-time in the industry ever.
Yeah.
So after I graduated college, I graduated during the Rona Fund. I took a full-time job with the firearms retailer that I was working with, and I was managing their marketing. And so I went to SHOT Show in 2020, and my first year was not my favorite year. Or I guess it was 21, I guess. And it was still COVID restrictions and all that nonsense. And I got around it because I drink coffee like it is water.
Yeah.
And so they had a rule where if you had your mask off so you were drinking, you were fine. I just put it around my coffee cup and had it full to the brim everywhere I went and just held it here while right at my mouth the entire day. But that trip, 2/3 of my travel team from the company canceled the day before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he wasn't even my boss, but upper management, the COO and myself attended all the meetings that 6 people were supposed to attend in the span of a week. So that was a very long week for me.
Yeah.
But I was selling co-op marketing. I was doing all sorts of things. And I was making great connections. And I was having a ton of fun. But that is definitely not my favorite memory. I would have to say, and I mean this honestly, the first year being there with Alchemy and Cabot and just working a floor again and talking about guns in a way that I deeply care about. It's not a job, working a sales floor isn't something that's tenable for life, but it's something I really enjoyed because I like talking to people at an esoteric level about the tools that they're selecting. And being able to do that alongside, again, one of my best friends in the world, and just smile and have a great time and have their ownership there and they are having an amazing time and they're laughing along with us. It's really an unrivaled experience for that because that show is so sanitized and it's either really professional or really over dramatic where people are having chaotic parties and there's all the drama. Finding the middle road between having a lot of fun and being super professional with really good people, I personally think is unrivaled.
Yeah, so last year's my second one. I am not beholden to anybody, so this has been great to be the normie get to go into things wow, this is crazy. And it's been going to the Alchemy booth was always a great especially the second year where you get to at least we didn't really handle it, but you get to look at these very custom, these very they're more art pieces that are functional art pieces.
Especially the Cabot stuff, right?
Yes.
This year especially, or this last year, where we had all the gun of the month guns.
Yes.
Really, really cool.
You're doing
Yeah,
great.
doing
Thank you.
exceptionally. Ask for a
Thank
reload
you.
on that as well, if you don't mind.
And another gin and tonic? Sounds good.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
so, you know,
the Gundam months were awesome just
Oh my
to even
gosh,
look
like,
at.
you usually don't see them all, but they were all together in all their glory in a single case. And so I guess that kind of takes us back to the Cabot side. So Cabot, being the parent company of Alchemy, does the exact, I don't want to say opposite, but they approach the 1911 in an inverse fashion. So where Alchemy is the old world styling, inspired somewhat by the new world, so like the undercut and stuff like that, the traditionalists might not love, but it is an improvement and something that Alchemy does very well. Cabot takes an aerospace engineering worldview to the canvas of the 1911. So there's not the hand fitting. It is aerospace tolerances on a 1911, and it is unrivaled.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, cool. So it's made really well. But then it's a canvas for insane materials. Like the most famous Cabot, of course, is they did the moon shot, which has literal pieces of the moon on it. But then they also did their series of pistols literally made from meteorite. Every piece of that gun is a meteorite. And it's turned into Damascus steel from meteorite. I cannot describe enough or make it clear enough. There's an 800,000-year-old or whatever it is, year-old meteorite turned into Damascus steel, turned into a functional set of 1911 pistols.
That's good for shooting Nazis.
That is how you kill space Nazis.
Yes, it's my one weakness: meteorite 1911.
The ones that didn't make it to Argentina that went to the moon,
Or
the dark side of the moon that are hiding,
or
that's the gun for them.
Or the ones in the middle of the earth, hanging out with the gray people.
That is America's Excalibur. So, and speaking of like cool guns, like taking it back to like they did crazy stuff, but I think, and I will use the word ultimate here, the ultimate Cabot set of pistols was released this year for the anniversary of D-Day.
Okay, yeah, I think I saw a couple of those. Like they're almost the USGI, but they're just immaculate. Or
they are made entirely from steel that's turned into Damascus.
Yeah,
that has been created from the sands of Normandy beaches.
Okay,
that has been recovered from Normandy, and actual artifacts from D-Day. So we're talking helmets recovered. And what's great is, too, they didn't melt down full helmets. They took artistic pieces out of a helmet and from bandoliers and from stripper clips and from the whole 9 yards. They took these steel components and they turned it into Damascus, in addition to the sand from the beaches that American blood is still part of, and turned into a set of 1911 pistols. I mean, hell, the gold bead front sight is made from the brass of a 30-06 shell that recovered from the scene.
Jeez.
It is so thoughtful. And just to really point out, like, the quality of the people behind the quality and thoughtfulness of the gun, one of those guns will stay in perpetuity with Cabot to celebrate that history. And another one of them is being donated is a good word for it, but is being auctioned off with all profits going to veterans charities.
Yeah.
It's a legacy piece. It's telling that story of American like heroism and spirit with their actual, like, the pieces and blood, sweat, tears, and realism. I wrote an article about the gun on my website if you're interested to learn more. But it's an amazing set of pistols,
and it's not just that like easy homage. Like you have the Henrys and the Winchester Centennials.
It's not a gun that says like the D-Day edition or it's engraved. It's Damascus steel made from like impossible pieces. Like, I mean, sand to Damascus is incredible.
Yeah, and then Alchemy's coming out. Were they coming out at the same time? Was with those D-Day guns? Were they coming out like that USGI model?
That was I think right around the same time. It was a little space, but the Resto Mod series is all kind of spaced out too. That was, I think, Eli's flagship design was that, like his I think it was the third or second Resto Mod of the year. Forgive me on that. I think it's the second, which was like a 1913, 1914 USGI homage with like the Harris hammer and the Harris rear sight, like phenomenally thought out with the vintage classic finish from Cabot on it with amazing grips. I got to shoot that gun with Eli recently. It's actually the first time he and I, in all of our years of friendship, actually got to pull a trigger together at the Griffin and Howell facilities, which are just, it's one of the cool, it is, in my opinion, the best gun club in America. and we got to shoot side by side together. I had that Walther we shot today on my hip, a Cabot in my hand. He had an Alchemy. I was helping demo Cabot, Alchemy, and Walther handguns to the James Bond community. It was an amazing experience.
So yeah, I know we talked a little bit about that kind of like the Walther roundup, but it was had a lot more with Alchemy and Cabot. You also went on another trip recently, which I really want to talk about because it was mainly about your book.
Yep.
So why don't you talk to us about your trip to Switzerland?
Germany, you mean?
Germany. Sorry,
it's all right.
Yeah,
no, it's quite
sorry.
all right. The Germans are still in control.
Allegedly.
Walther, Germany, incredible stuff. So, I mean, this was something that I never expected to happen while I was researching the book at all. I expected to kind of learn things secondhand. I'll give you a good example. Like, I reached out to my friends at Beretta. I had some contacts in their marketing department.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I'm writing this book, Bond's Original Guns of Beretta. I would love to include old manuals, drawings, whatever you have in your archive. It would mean the world to have your team Dropbox it over to me.
Yeah.
And it took a while, but we got some really amazing pieces that you'll see in the book, which was great. But Walther, obviously, is the definitive Bond gun.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I mean, 1962 rolls around, the first silver screen adventure with Sean Connery and Dr. No. He's presented at PPK. I'm using air quotes there because it's a Walther PP.
It's not like your weak Beretta, or what was the term?
Yeah,
they used?
yeah. It's the Beretta is nice and light, especially in a lady's handbag or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Which, if you want to get into the weeds on that, the Beretta that he handed wasn't even the right Beretta. It's an M1934 or 5. You don't know the caliber, so you don't know the model.
Yeah.
And so hands him a 32 or 380 Beretta, and he's handed a 380 Walther PP instead of what's being verbally described, which is a 7.65 millimeter Walther PPK with a delivered like a brick through a plate glass window, and the American CIA swear by them, and all the other posh stuff that happens. Yeah. Super fun, but yeah, it's not the right gun. But anyway, that's the movie that introduced so many people to James Bond. So that gun lives fully with James Bond. Walther and Bond are married for life. There is no, in my opinion, no doubt about that. And so going to Germany and going through the Walther archives, the Walther Museum, spending the entire time that I was there with the owner of Walther himself, it was unrivaled. It was incredible. It was an experience that I would have never anticipated that somehow just kind of came together. I mean, it was a huge blessing, and it came together because of a lovely woman named Monica, who was really Wolf Heinz Flaumer, the owner of Walther. She is his money penny. Like, she has been his private secretary for 30, 40 years now.
Yeah.
And I approached her at SHOT Show this year. So just to give you the timeline, I went to Germany in May, right? So I was in Germany in May. January, the VP of marketing at Walther, my friend Jens, pulls me aside and says, I really want you to meet Monica. We're going to introduce you. He's like, I don't know if it'll happen, but if we can get you to Germany for your book, we're going to get you to Germany. So he introduces me to the right-hand woman of the owner of the company, and she says, oh, yes, I think Wolf would love to do that. 3 months later, we're booking flights, and then in May, I am rolling up to Walther headquarters, and I glance up, and there is a Walther banner and a Walther banner, but between the two banners, there's the American flag. And the owner pulls me aside as we're talking, and he says, we fly that today for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is just incredibly humbling.
Yeah, it's like that there's red carpet, and then there's that.
There's being picked up by a car at the airport with a 007 designation license plate. Every car at Carl Walther Ulm has a 007 designation at the end.
That's
it's
pretty
incredible.
Yeah.
And so, like, being there and hearing stories and learning about these guns in person, I mean, was incredible. But then to also capture them, I was left alone, which was hilarious. Like, the last day I was there, I had a half day before we flew out the next morning, and they had to drive me out to the next airport. They pulled me aside. They're like, hey, Wolf and my handler, if you will, like the guy who's kind of like interpreting and doing all the things, Wolf speaks English, but he's 82 and he doesn't have. When he gets really excited, he starts speaking in German.
Yeah.
And so he was there to help me out through all that. They pulled out the not accurate, but screen used Walther WA-2000 sniper rifle from a case and set it down in front of me on a conference table in the owner's private office, which is a museum. I mean, they're wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling glass with cases top to bottom with Walther handguns from every era. And they pull out the screen used by Timothy Dalton gun, and they put it on a coffee table, or the conference table, and then they bring me a pot of coffee.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, we have to all go to meetings. Would you be okay in here by yourself for a while? And as they said that, they drop a set of keys to all of the gun cases and a set of snippers because they had like tags and all them.
Yeah.
Write down what serial number goes with what tag. We'll take care of the rest. And they just left me alone there for like 2 hours. It was incredible.
So
they came into the room, and this is going to sound bad, but I was half dressed. But I had a good reason for it. I showed up to the office in a suit and tie.
Yeah.
And I needed the jacket, tie, and shirt that I was wearing for a flat lay because I was wearing a Turnbull and Asser shirt. I was wearing the correct suit from Dugdale Bros, which supplied fabric more than likely to Anthony Sinclair, who made all the suits for Sean Connery, and I had a silk knit tie. So I had to put all that down on a flat lay. So they come in, I'm in my undershirt and suit trousers, and I'm like, well, hello there. Like, I'll be right with you.
It's an American thing. Don't question it.
Like, you guys don't have air conditioning here. Please.
Or ice.
Yeah. And I'm drinking hot coffee by the gallon.
But so for those who are uninitiated, what is the WA-2000? I mean, I know what it is.
WA-2000 is a bullpup sniper rifle that came out of the horrific Munich Olympics, right?
Yep.
So if you're familiar with that, a bunch of people got killed. Germans were woefully unprepared for it.
The world was, I feel like.
Yeah. And so, the world did not, like, that was like I think the first touch point for terrorism in the international scene. It really told people what was coming.
Yeah.
And so, well, all these agencies were now issuing contracts and scopes of work for these new gun builds. One of them was for a sniper rifle. So Walther, being a definite German institution, over-engineered a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
A very complex bullpup semi-automatic rifle that was so expensive to produce, they only ever made around 176 total units. Of those units, they estimate about 150, 155 remain in circulation today.
Okay. In private collections and everything like
collections, that. One sold at Rock Island the other day for almost $100,000.
Oh, that's pretty, reasonable.
Right. Well, I saw 4 of them in Germany.
Oh.
So, to give you that idea, like, I just gave you all the numbers for what it could be, and that's what it was. Now, what's really great is that gun came out in the mid-'80s, and I don't know how it made it onto the set. These are the stories that have been gate-kept and that I would love to learn someday. But it made it onto the set of The Living Daylights, which is Timothy Dalton's first outing as James Bond, 1987. This gun is new. It's hot. It's got a Walther banner on it, and it's an adaptation in part of a Fleming short story, which is a sniper counter-sniper sequence. And Ian Fleming put a fictional, like, Winchester, experimental target rifle in James Bond's hands. Yeah. And so they brought in this Walther, and there's this phenomenal sequence that is almost pulled directly from the page of a sniper versus a counter sniper and James Bond shooting, and he's using the WA-2000.
So, not to derail the WA-2000 story, so because I wanted to bring this back to Jack Carr.
Totally.
So I know that Jack Carr is very deliberate with his products.
Absolutely.
And at first, if you're not used to it, it's very jarring. It takes you out for a little bit. I remember reading the forward you're talking about, that whole sniper scene in the first book, where it was he goes in that hide. He explains every I wear him this Sitka.
What he's wearing, the scope.
I was drinking Black Rifle coffee out of my Black Rifle coffee Yeti tumbler, and it's very jarring at first. Does Ian I've never read an Ian Fleming.
So Ian Fleming wrote before product placement was a thing, and those like esoteric and super hyper realistic details are kind of what defined the Fleming novels. Like, to give you an example, I can tell you the brand and the scent of a soap that James Bond used while staying at a villain's house in one of the novels. Because Ian Fleming, while not doing product placement, because he was just in the same way that Jack does, I think Jack gets a bad rap because we live in a world of hyper commercialization where people just assume that he's getting some sort of massive check from all these companies. He's not. He's writing in companies that he believes in, people or companies that his friends own, and tools that he's also used. And he's writing in that Fleming style where, James Bond wore a two-piece lightweight wool or heavyweight, depending on where it was, navy blue suit with a silk knit tie and a, depending on the weather, silk shirt or a Sea Island cotton shirt with loafers because he hated laces on his feet.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a description you would find in most novels today.
Yeah.
And that's how Ian Fleming wrote every single one of his books. Hyperrealism was his goal.
Well, it's so because that's what, when you first read Jack Carr novel, if you don't know that off the top of your head, it feels like a very product forward book. And then in the newest book, there's a chapter about that writer. I don't know if you remember that chapter.
Oh, of course I do.
Where you hate that dude, and because he tries to do, it sounds like some of like the writings he talks about where he wrote that book about, and then he got an argument about some journalists solving a police crime, and it took a lot of the readers out because he was using the term clip instead of magazine, and that
he wrote
never
a book
got
afterwards,
that.
and he's so mad.
He never got it.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things that after reading that chapter, I realized, you kind of have that subtle appreciation for someone who takes not just the meticulous details of this is the clothes they're wearing, this is why they're wearing it, this is the tools they're using.
Yeah.
But it makes it seem more realistic because we all choose things in our daily lives. We choose the sunglasses you wear, the watches you wear. We're
Everything
very
tells
meticulous.
a story.
Yeah, tells a story. And I feel like a lot of, now going back and reading a lot of the books that I have read that don't have that sort of detail, you're curious, like, why do they, what handgun do they have? It's like, I produced a handgun. Like,
Yep.
What handgun?
Well,
Why'd
I think
you
the
pick
difference
it?
between Jack Carr or Ian Fleming and like your standard author like that is how, when you picture a hero literarily that you've read about, how much of that is fog in your brain? How much of it is what you've input into the story because it was not filled in for you?
Yeah.
And how much for Jack Carr or Ian Fleming is so thoughtfully put together that, you can put it together very clearly and you know if you're right or wrong with what you're visualizing. And I think we get caught up in this a lot because we're part of this industry and we're part of this world where these details feel almost monotonous, where it's like, I don't need to know that a 320 is a 9mm. I already know that. Yeah. But for the average reader, I mean, you go to one of his book signings, and I went to one at one point, and the 2 rows in front of me were gray-haired female librarians. And I think that talks to, because of the political nature of these books, it is not written for the gun community or the outdoor, it's a tactical world. It's written for everybody, which means that while we might not sometimes have an appreciation for those details, because for us, it's like, well, sure, if he's doing this, I would have already imagined him in certain kit and doing this and that, which he's now naming by name. He's like almost spoon-feeding it to you if you're overly familiar. But for the uninformed, he's painting a vivid picture. And in the same way, for me, I learned about watch brands or soaps or fabrics making shirts or suits from Ian Fleming. I'm being introduced to, like you said, like Sitka. Like, not that I didn't know what that was, but now you're being introduced to different pieces of their collection that you definitely wouldn't have before, and not in an inorganic way, I think.
And so and I think what happens a lot with culture is you'll read you can go find any dime paperback thriller, and all the details you're trying to fill in, you don't get anything out of the story. Now people read a Jack Carr novel, like, what is this? And I go Google it.
Yep. Well, he posted Gear Guide, like I said, and there's photos, links, and descriptions of the primary pieces used. And so I can review that in the same way, like when you were a kid and you might like flip to the cover of the paperback you're reading because like you're not being described something and you want to see how the author or the person that the author at least commissioned envisioned a character or a sequence or a scene. And you're like, I remember, I was a very avid reader growing up, and I still am, doing that and going, well, that's based on what I read. That looks nothing like what ended up on the cover.
Yeah.
And that was very jarring.
Yes.
Where if you did that with Jack Carr, you'd be like, well, sure. Like, yeah, I mean, of course it's what I'm seeing because it's what I read about and it's what I see in the photo on the Gear Guide that I see on his Instagram. Hell, it's what the guy wears or drives anyway.
Well, then also like with today's technology, think of some, I remember growing up and seeing like reading the books like kind of online of the Vickers, like you go there's like I wish I could remember what they're called, but it's like Weapons of Vietnam, and you can look through and look at the tanks and the guns and the grenades.
Yeah.
Nowadays
At best you have like a scholastic book that has like one crummy photo of a 1911.
Exactly. Now it's the generations coming up will read that book and get this very hyper realistic, a SIG P320 redone, or I think
the P210 by Bruce Gray.
Yes.
Like it's a very specific weapon.
And now you can go on Google and look at all those photos. So even some of the kit he talks about, like Team Wendy, like go look at Team Wendy bump helmet, and then you see all the photos of the guys wearing. You're like, oh, that puts a better visual in my head of what Jack Carr was trying to reach, rather than it's a helmet.
Right. And I think what's important about that too is it takes it back to what I said about Carr having like a political and like theological is the wrong word, but like there's a rhetorical and political message being pushed. There's a value set that is being described to you.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same manner, while the product is hyper defined, so are his citations for what he's reading. I mean, he has characters citing like Ayn Rand or Peter Zeihan or George Orwell or whatever the case may be. And the acknowledgments of his book are 20 pages long because he defines and he writes out, here's the authors that I really, that helped shape me and helped me learn about this book. Here's the title of their book. Please go read it. I mean, he has reading lists. He has book clubs. And so, and that's what I remind people when they try to tell me that Jack is disingenuous with what he's said or what he's written because it has a product. I'm like, well, sure, but 3 pages ago there was 6 paragraphs about this very micro niche thing that happened 50 years ago that is now informing this book today in 2024.
Yeah. And that's what I think. I think he's kind of that weird product time. He's kind of coming to tail end where like Navy SEALs get out and then they sell their books, and he
makes fun of that very well.
Yes, it's like and not to talk disparagingly, but like the Chris Kyles. I can't remember the Reaper of Baghdad.
Sure.
Those kind of books came out after people got done with their service to kind of to at least inform people what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
But Jack Carr came out. First of all, he's like, I want to be a writer when I grow up. I need to go live the lifestyle I want to essentially write about beforehand. Sorry, you want?
Yeah, I was just going to. You're talking about a number of different things. I'm going to pivot just a little bit.
Sure.
You talked about Ian Fleming and his writing styles, and then obviously Jack Carr as well. Have you heard of or are you familiar with Zach James at all?
No, I haven't had the pleasure.
No, okay. So he started a series. The first book is called Deception.
Okay.
And it is very Jack Carr-ish. And I'd encourage you to take some time and read it. It's an easy read.
Sure.
I think it's about just under 300 pages, but it's very Jack Carr. You got a contract team that's going off and doing things in Africa and then has to do some things here stateside as well, and the shenanigans they get into. I would be interested to understand what your perspective would be from a strong knowledge base of Ian Fleming stuff and Jack Carr's, and then this up and coming author who is trying to create this series very much like the Jack Carr series.
No, I think that's fascinating. I feel like the modern thriller space, not that there's not a ton of stuff coming out, but I do believe there's a vacuum like that, which is why Jack's filling it so well.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously there's obviously more people producing amazing product that should be celebrated. And so, absolutely. Send me some titles. I'd love to give them a read.
Absolutely.
I love devouring stuff like that.
So, and that's kind of, I'm going to have to geek out here, and thank God that Jefe just took a bathroom break, because his eyes would roll back into his head so hard. But
I have a habit of putting people to sleep like that.
Right? But back in 2010, I was in Afghanistan on a deployment with the 101st Airborne, and I had an office job. I was a battalion BMO, or battalion motor officer. So my job at the time was to coordinate maintenance for the battalion, coordinate coalition efforts, and then work with the Estonians as well. I had a lot of downtime in the evenings, and one of the things I started to do was write a book. I got about 10 chapters in, and just kind of stalled right there. So the interesting thing is, now that you've talked about Ian Fleming and you've talked about Jack Carr and the differences between the two and how Ian Fleming described things and talked about the details and how Jack Carr does the same thing, but yet uses very specific brand product placement type stuff. That is something that I've never considered. Obviously, I was a novice,
Sure.
but being able to see that and understand that a little bit better, would maybe jumpstart my creative juices to get that going again,
No, I think that's really cool because I think both of them did such a great job with that. And I hate that it's an easy detail to glom onto for both as like a similarity. I mean, in terms of where like the Venn diagram of the two come together, that is an easy point to reference. But I think what makes them both so similar, aside from that little moment, is both Jack and Fleming do an exceptional job of writing what I consider to be primary source fiction. They were both up to the minute political thrillers when they were written.
Say that Red Sky Morning has a lot of things that have came to pass since he written it.
I mean, all of them are like that. Like all those books, you read them and there's pandemic level events that he was kind of already writing about, and then things kind of came to be, and all that kind of stuff I think flows together in the same way that Ian Fleming, when you read one of his books, it's a time capsule.
Yeah.
It's something you read, and I'm seeing the world of 1953 or 1962 through the lens of an Englishman, a writer, and somebody who has had this life and has all these experiences and things. And he was also a journalist by trade, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in the same way that Jack Carr is a researcher and a passionate journalist in that own way, Fleming literally was. And I think the two of them do an exceptional job of writing something that has an incredible plot, incredible emotion, incredible feeling, but tells you something about the world in that exact moment that it was written.
Yeah.
So Jack's books are the same type of book that I will pass down to my children someday to give them a worldview and a lens into what came before. And then Fleming is even further back for them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is the product stuff and all the other things are easy to replicate.
Yeah.
But being informed, and then not only being informed, but using that to tell a story and using that as a telescoping lens to frame everything around, that is the magic that makes those two authors to me so similar.
Yeah. And it's like, since he's gone now, like the whole,
I'll be quick behind.
I would say the not Nancy Pelosi character in it, the fact that they essentially replace a presidential candidate.
I mean, hell, Hillary Clinton was in the first book, right?
Yes,
I mean, there's a very clear stand-in for the Clintons and their political wheelings and dealings.
And then I know, and I keep on getting this mixed up. No Time to Die was kind of delayed because of COVID. It wasn't because of the production.
No, correct. It was, there was some production delays that happened, which is why it might be confusing. Production delays occurred, delayed the release date, and then COVID released it or delayed it a numerous amount of times after the fact.
Okay. Because I guess the rumor mill behind it was because they had to rewrite some stuff because it was too close to COVID. Kind of like Jack Carr. I remember Jack Carr talked I think in one of his interviews was like, it's kind of weird. Like I was already working on
a pandemic event book,
book, and then this happened, and then it was just like what I was writing was what was happening.
Yeah.
So for those who are listening at home, if Jack Carr writes about it, chances are it's probably going to happen. We need to really be paying attention to what he's probably. It's, to be honest, I think Jack Carr could be the elusive Russian time traveler that everyone's talked about. This came from the future to come back to the past.
Yeah, he's too American for that, though.
I mean, that'd be the greatest guys for like a Russian time traveler. It'd be. From Utah. It's great.
An incredible Navy SEAL with a storied career, a generous human being, and also a penultimate writer. But he does spend a lot of time in Russia in one of the books. Now it's for vengeance, so it's fair.
Well, and this is what I mean. Even as I'm a nobody in this space, and that's what's been so great to do these interviews, go to SHOT Shows, being the absolute nobody, because you can see exactly how the firearms industry treats nobodies like me. It's they ask you, what can you do for me? There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
What can you do for me?
Yeah, I sympathize. I don't,
Yeah.
I make a point whether I get yelled at for it or not. I typically don't wear my badge.
Yeah.
Not that I am somebody, but just I don't need people to know who I am.
Mhm.
And based on how you interact with me, just from a person-to-person respectful level, because I mean, great. I do the Instagram and I have the book coming out, which I'm really proud of the book. But I'm still a very, very, very small fish in an incredibly large pond.
Oh, you just met the the owner of Walther flew you out to play with his WA2000. That's not a euphemism, but Jack Carr, even if you tag him in something, just say, I love this book. He will take time out of his day to write, like at least message you or comment, say, hey, thanks so much for the time.
Yeah.
I don't know how much man hours that takes for somebody, especially of his caliber this time.
It's a lot of man hours, and I know that personally. And it's him.
Yeah,
it's not some team guy. And I hope someday he's able to transition away from that to some degree. Because while it has built the brand where it is today, the man is a working machine between the Amazon series, between the books, and now he's got his nonfiction that's coming out soon.
Which I want to talk to you about. That
totally. So. But like, oh my gosh, like the guy is moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yep.
And he still makes time for a little guy like me when I take a picture on a beach.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it crafted a real friendship. I mean, it changed my life to have him as a friend, not because of the clout and everything else, but because he's an inspiring, damn good person that you just want to talk to because you want to know them more.
He's one of those guys that you meet, and I've only met him. I was at the book signing just a couple was a month ago, 2 months ago.
June.
Yeah. Time is July and August has just disappeared from us.
Yeah, it's not real. It's
But
like purgatory.
Even the amount of time he spent with every individual person that wanted to spend some extra time, he was willing to do with it. Even though that guy probably got on a plane that night and flew to the next book signing.
Yeah, he did. I mean, the book tour this year was day in, day out, day in, day out. Like last year, he had space in between them. This year, it really was. He was coming from, I think, Arizona, and he was flying to Philadelphia.
Yep.
And he left the next morning. And talk about time spent. Like he and I, we went to dinner afterwards and chatted for a while, and we accidentally closed down a bar. We were like,
"Oops!
Oh, I need to go to bed early." Yeah, of course, man, no problem. And then they're turning on the lights and kicking us out. And that's just not because we were just like chilling, but because he's such a good person. And like you said, like when he looks at you, you see like the genuine nature of a human being. And you see someone who actually wants to connect with you on a personal level and listen to what you have to say. And you don't get that on a high caliber individual ever. And I think, God willing, he takes a step back from the social so he can continue being as amazing. And maybe he gets to do more in-person events like that someday. And maybe people get to see him for who he is instead of just hearing about it through some pixels.
Yeah. And it's, even just listening to his interviews that he does, he's that way with everyone he interviews. It's not,
he's just enthusiastic and excited. And, and I think it's funny because he's built himself up to where he is.
Yeah.
But the way you just framed the way you see yourself as the outsider is absolutely the way he sees himself still today.
Yes.
He treats it as I am not the lowest of the low. He has self-dignity, but he understands that he, as far as he's concerned, he's just another guy. And he treats you like that. And he treats himself like that.
And I know that kind of gets, that kind of translation gets lost in the internet space because
it does.
It's hard to.
You don't get to press flesh and see someone. Yeah. Looking at someone in their eyes is a very different experience. Than
it's really weird because now we're over. It's candlelight. We had a couple drinks.
I know. We're leaning over the table and it's mirrored. It's mainly because.
So a little bit about. So I know you have done some work with vintage leather. I can't remember.
Yeah, vintage gun leather today.
Yes.
Great guy over there, Jason. Jason does an awesome job.
So the J-frame holster that you use, the inverted one. I got one. I spent a little bit of coinage on it.
Yeah, the Burns Martin.
Yes. From a couple that out of Montana that does leather working. I'm still dialing it in. So
it's a weird draw stroke.
It's not just the weird draw stroke, just wearing the shoulder holster itself.
Oh, sure.
Even with a light 32 revolver, there's a time where you're just like,
Yeah.
things get a little uncomfortable. So
Yeah, if you're not used to a shoulder rig, it's definitely a strange phenomena to have the gun kind of floating almost.
yes,
I mean, you're questioning the print and you're doing this and that. And that's the Burns Martin is phenomenal because it's an upside down
Yes.
shoulder holster. In the same way that, like, for my PPK, the only shoulder holster I'll ever wear, unless someone makes something very similar to it, is my Galco Executive.
Yep.
Pierce Brosnan rig.
Yep.
And the reason being is it is the only one that is so form fitted to that profile. It has no thumb snap. It has a retention screw.
Yep.
It carries without a thumb snap. I mean, I'm a 36, 38 regular jacket typically.
Yeah.
It's really hard to wear something that isn't so oversized that it looks like I stole it out of my dad's closet, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm wearing it fitted that fits my silhouette better, I need to be able to conceal that gun still.
Yep.
And so that's where that kind of comes into play. So yeah, the Burns Martin's a fascinating rig, and it's the original James Bond holster.
Yes.
Well, that's paired with the Walther PPK erroneously because it's only meant for the wheel guns.
So he had it burnt. He had
a Burns Martin triple draw shoulder holster that was incorrectly Walther PPK, and that's primarily because a fan had written him, Jeffrey Boothroyd,
Gotcha.
and asked for him to go away from the Beretta. And Boothroyd in the 50s had been reading American gun media as an Englishman.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the Charles Askins and stuff like that of the world were writing at the time, right? And they were very, very pro the brand new and shiny Centennial Airweight. So he recommended a Centennial Airweight for James Bond with the Burns Martin triple draw shoulder holster in conjunction with a full-size Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum.
Okay.
So James Bond always carried a full-size and compact handgun, one on the body, one in the car. He's like, great, do a caliber class that is similar, make them both wheel guns. Fleming pushed back. He said, from my experience in World War II, I have a preference for guns that can be suppressed. I know revolvers cannot be suppressed. So he ended up, and the story is very detailed in the book, kind of how he gets there, ends up on the PPK.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he goes back to his previous letters and selects this Burns Martin triple draw shoulder holster as the holster to pair with the gun. Now, if you're not familiar with the Burns Martin, it's a spring setup holster. So there's like two L-shaped springs where the barrel and the cylinder rest.
Okay.
And then a small pouch of leather that covers the front of the trigger guard, or the bottom of the trigger guard.
Yeah.
That spring and that tension is all based around the framing of the gun, which is all focused on the fact that it's cupping from below the cylinder.
Yeah.
And so a semi-automatic pistol does not work in that design.
Yeah, exactly.
Full stop.
Yeah.
Like whether or not you refabricated it, I don't see that design working as well because it's really based on the fact that the cylinder flushes out from the sides of the frame, that it's able to kind of just capture it. A semi-automatic gun, you're not going to do that. At some point, it's going to slide out unless there's some sort of strap. Yeah. And so that's kind of what happens.
This one's actually pretty interesting because they took the spring out of it, and what they did is on the top they have almost like an elastic band.
Oh, yeah, Bianchi did that, and Safariland did as well.
Yes. So that's what this one has kind of set up.
I heard the elastic ones wear out over time, and you can lose a gun. The spring ones are the ones that are preferred. If you talk to Jason over at Vintage Gun Leather, he's collected and carried them over the years pretty aggressively, and he can give you a pretty great story of which ones are very safe and which ones have maybe an expiration date.
Okay.
So it's a fascinating thing because, Safariland picked up the design after Burns Martin went out of business.
Okay.
After Bianchi made them for a while, too. I think it was a patented design, that spring front, which is why the elastic kind of came into play.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for just ruining that for me.
Hey, last thing I want you to do is drop your 32 Smith & Wesson.
That wouldn't be the first time already. So
yeah, but out of a jacket, like what are you going to wear at a swanky venue like this and go, oh, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Do you have any Grey Poupon? Let me go ahead and put this gun back real quick. Throw a little Wayne's
this
World
looks like this is a pretty swanky establishment. Granted, we are in a very probably not pro 2A section of our state, but
such is life.
Such is life. And that's why
There's a reason you have a blue governor.
A what?
And there's a reason you have a blue governor in a red state, and I do believe we are there.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yes.
But
that's what happens when 5 counties elect.
Absolutely.
And I've heard, I'm friends with state legislators who are really pushing the idea of an electoral college within the state to elect
that makes sense in like
governor.
These rural. I mean, that would change Illinois forever too.
Yeah.
I think Kansas, Illinois, Wisconsin, the map there would change dramatically too. You wouldn't just have like 2 cities defining the entire state.
Yeah.
Oregon's that exact same argument as well. You go to Oregon and it's like you go to Portland and you go to like Eugene, and that dictates the entire state, even though it's just two major cities.
Absolutely.
In the entire state. That's why Mike Grantham left.
Yeah.
Like, because originally they were living there, having a great time. Then
life happens when politics get interfering.
Yeah.
It's disappointing. Let me use the restroom right quick.
Okay. Yep. And well, Mark and I will talk for a little bit. Mark, so what suit are you wearing?
That's a very good question. This is actually a Men's Warehouse of all places, right? I know you scoff at it, right? But feel the fabric. That is wool. You wouldn't think that that's wool. It's a nice pinstripe. I spent about $2,000 for 2 suits from Men's Warehouse. They tailored them. They're really nice, and I have been very much a fan of them ever since.
Well, this is actually pretty funny. So just to like paint the scene for everybody who can't see this, we tried to do video this time because we really, really wanted to have some sort of like video of how kind of cool this entire day turned out. So we met with Caleb, we met with John, we met up at the gun range. I dressed like a Slavic bastard for a little bit. We shot guns, had a good time. Then we come out here to this very schwanky cocktail lounge. And now we are in sports coats. We are in nice shirts. And it's not our usual slumming. Like
No,
most of the time we record this, I'm in like a wife beater and shorts with a J-frame stuck in my pocket.
Yeah, I'm to my 3rd gin and tonic. I'm not sure. What are you drinking?
I'm just doing neat rye whiskey.
Yeah. See,
so
and normally we're just like Michelob Ultras.
Michelob, or if we're feeling fancy, Yingling Flights. Oh, you don't like the flights themselves?
No, I don't. It tastes weird to me.
It tastes the same thing, man.
It
I mean, there's
doesn't.
a little bit different.
No, it's like the difference between Coors Light and Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Well, one's a light lager and the other one isn't a light lager. So yes, there is a difference.
But there's a distinct difference in taste, and that's what I see between the two, right? So, I mean, anyway.
So so this is definitely different from our normal venue. I know you've done KB, we've done SHOT Show.
Yeah.
It'd be cool this year to do SHOT Show.
I think we will. Yep.
Like in the media room, just grab a couple people. I don't like what I'd love us to do is try to. He's coming back now. So actually, we'll give his seat back and we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll give his seat back.
Also, just to paint the picture, we are in a corner booth. Caleb has his own mic. It's really, really great. And then Mark and I get to share a mic because we haven't figured out how to do more than 3 or more than 2 right now. So
we figured out how to do it. It's just I've got to spend the money to do it. That's the problem.
Yeah, money's always the issue. We were talking about our just kind of describing what we got going on here. And we're almost at over 2 hours.
Yeah.
We have a nasty habit of rambling. I do. So.
Oh no, it's all of us. It's almost like it's good for podcasting.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, the ability of you to expound on some of the things that you cherish, that you love, I think is really, really cool. The fact that you have taken this Bond persona, and in my opinion, brought it into the modern age for individuals who may not be privy to it, right? So I'm a Gen Xer for sure. I would say, Jefe, you're probably a millennial. Yeah, you're a millennial, right? Would you be considered millennial or Z?
I'm, depending on the marketing textbook, I'm a 97.
Okay.
So 97, 96 is the split. So I think I'm technically like the birth of Gen Z, which means that I don't have any culpability for what's come behind me.
So I'm not responsible, but the internet has been all my life.
But you're realistically bringing something from the boomers,
definitely,
and bringing it into Gen Z's parameters, and at least their line of sight if they choose to look for that. And I think that's pretty cool.
Well, I really enjoy like framing, like you said, the world of Bond, which spans 70 years, and making it accessible in the same way that I think it's funny. Like I like bridging the gap. I opened this by saying that I believe in getting people into firearms through the world of James Bond is kind of my philosophy. But I also, because I'm part of the firearms industry, have been able to get people in the world of firearms into James Bond, because they might be, like you said, like someone that grew up playing GoldenEye and maybe saw a couple Brosnan films, but maybe don't have an appreciation for 25 films and 6 actors or the novels. But hopefully the content gives you a reason to pick up a book or to try that old movie one more time. That's what I enjoy. Is it goes both ways, and I think that's where my book kind of falls into play too. Right? Is it's a book that's, I hope, will be incredibly enjoyable for people who are in the world of firearms and gives them that lens to James Bond. Now, for the people who are hyper familiar with James Bond, they are going to learn so much about the world of guns. And that balancing act, where it's not one but the other, or either, it gets to be both, is what I enjoy doing the most.
Well, I think what you do a great job, and it's just an homage to like how much time and effort and how much soul you put into this. It's very easy to pick like one of these things. Like, I'm really big into guns.
Sure.
That's it. And that's end period. I can recite every caliber French armies have used since, the late 1500s. But having that blend of realistically like something that you can use every day, like men's fashion, teamed up with classic carry firearms that are still useful today, on top of being self-aware and also aware of cultural things that are going and socioeconomical and political things are going around you at the same time, and being that kind of well-rounded individual rather than being the guy that wears grunt style and carries a staccato, or the guy that shops at Banana Republic all the time and just doesn't know anything.
Right. Well, I think, like I said, it's not about one or the other.
Yes.
And I think if you can't do both, you're not doing the lifestyle concept of like the James Bond world justice. Because like I said at the beginning, the firearms do not exist in a vacuum. Just because you pick up a PPK does not mean you're like embracing like that world, and you don't have to embrace it fully. But I mean, the clothes, they're amazing. The watches are awesome. The drinks, I mean, I've had 2 Negronis this evening because I read about them in a Bond novel.
Yep.
Are phenomenal. I'm a sucker for Campari now, thanks to that. And so, like, you get introduced to things, and rather than just going, okay, cool, yeah, I read about this in a book. Well, it had nothing to do with me. I'm going to talk about the guns because that's what I like. I think accepting the fact that embracing all of it, or at least most of it, is a better thing to do. It's not just about one. It's not just about the other. Holistic celebration, I think, gives you a more authentic appreciation for everything. Like I said, Sean Connery said it best. He had to work so hard to make everything look so easy. And isn't that what we're all striving for in the world of guns? Like ripping a bill drill flawlessly every single time, or doing those Instagram splits or whatever. Like the amount of time and effort that goes into, and obviously that's just like an ego moment that someone's putting out on the internet, right? But the amount of time and effort someone's putting into that shares very clearly with the world what they care about. Whether it's caring about what people think or their capability is down to the person.
Yeah.
But I think it shares that same story where effort and input equals quality output.
Yeah. So, 2 hour mark?
Yeah.
Where we at? Is that where we're at right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. 206. So, Caleb, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our show. It's been great to not only listen to you talk about everything that you're passionate about, your book, your relationship with Jack Carr, firearms, James Bond, but also actually get an opportunity to go shoot with you, go shoot some of the cool guns that you have been showcasing, especially that threaded 32 PPK. Soon we'll get a can for it, and
we'll go out again. Yeah,
we'll have
absolutely.
to go again soon.
So typically what we like to do, and we're going to put you on the spot,
Sure.
we usually like to give the quote-unquote last 30 seconds to the guest to just give us some folksy wisdom as to something that they can do to improve their lives, or something that what's your dad advice?
Well, I copped it at the beginning, and I'll say it again because I really do believe in it. It's the Connery quote. It's work incredibly hard in the background, and I can bring it back to, I guess, scripture as well if you really want to make it sound like dad advice. I'm a Catholic, and obviously the Lenten season is very important there. And there's a reading every year that we do that is my favorite, and it's those who pray in public get their own reward. And it's a reminder that if you're bragging and if you're focused on the id and yourself so heavily, that is in and of itself its own reward. That is the ego being celebrated, right? And so take the time, do the work, be the good person, and the results will show. Sean Connery as Bond is the pop culture kind of example of that, where the man sleeping in suits, learning all these things, and kind of being elevated from a bodybuilder into now what's considered like the definition of class, and a very small level of what that scripture says, right? But all that to say, it tells you the same story. Work very hard and do it quietly and be authentic, and life will be good.
Quite professional.
It's the best way to be.
Yes.
Fa, what's yours?
Don't wash your cast iron skillets, guys. Just
I cook with a cast iron every day. Please
Yes.
don't.
yes, please don't do it. Just lightly
Don't ruin
coat it
it.
with some oil, clean it out with a paper towel.
The same way that God put 1911s on this earth to be carried by Americans, cast iron was not meant for your dish soap.
Wait.
And
Yeah,
treat it right.
my wife introduced me when we first started dating. I was ignorant to cooking itself, and then ignorant to cast
So I
irons.
do all the cooking. So cast iron is my
Yes.
best friend.
Well, now that we have a healthy collection of antique Wagners that we use every day, and I am now the sole main cooker of the family. So do not wash your cast iron skillets. Lightly coat them with oil, clean them out with a paper towel, and send them on their way.
Outstanding. My last thing is gather a group of friends, invite someone new, go to the range and have some fun. That's exactly what we did today. And I think that we're better for it. Caleb, I know that Hefe and you have talked a lot, and being able to be around you and just hang out and get to know you a little bit better has been a lot of fun
It's
for
been
me.
a great day.
Yeah, it's been a great day.
Had a lot of good time.
Yeah. So
Best Monday ever.
yeah, best
I'll take it.
Monday ever. So without all being
Garfield can eat it.
with all that being said, that's going to conclude this episode. This was the oh, I'll have to set that aside. Yeah, we're at 2 hours. So, but this has probably been one of my most favorite episode to record so far. I think. What do you think?
Shot show was pretty fun.
The
Yeah, that was
venue
sure.
alone
That was
here,
fun.
I'll give it the venue.
Yeah. I think if we could get everybody together again for SHOT Show, that would be pretty cool. But with more mics, yeah, for sure. But with all of that being said, we do appreciate you guys sticking with us this far in the podcast. Check us out on all the different platforms, and then be ready for the next one that will be dropping on the 15th as well.
I want to start throwing down a challenge. So it sounds like Mark only wants to care about Buzzsprout and Apple Podcasts. I'm more of a Spotify fan myself. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, leave some sort of comment so we can start tracking that. And so I can show them that Spotify is a superior podcasting platform, and that we are doing so much better. Because he always sends me the analytics of Buzzsprout and Apple Podcasts, but he always tells me, Spotify, we don't need to worry about that. So if you are watching this on Spotify, leave us a fun note.
Funny thing is, you listen to it on Spotify, not watch it. But anyway, with all that being said, we're going to get out of here. Thanks again, guys. We'll catch you guys next time. Don't forget to live, laugh, and LARP. Bye, y'all.